Chapter 532. My real purpose in coming to this world is still the laws of heaven and earth. Liu's path of cultivation was different from others. The path of supremacy in all the worlds required one to understand the laws of heaven and earth of each world. After forming the two origins of matter and order, and after having a good time in the world of adepts, Liu was very clear about his path. His path was to become primeval, turning himself into the origin of all worlds in time and space. However, it was very difficult to reach the end of this path. Understanding the laws of heaven and earth of all worlds and constantly improving his matter and order origins was Liu's main goal for a long time to come. At my level, it's really too difficult to make a breakthrough in my cultivation. Nothingness was the beginning of heaven and earth. Existence was the mother of all things. Liu used the 5 elements as the foundation and combined them with the chi of heaven and earth to become the mother of all things. This was the origin of matter. This was existence. The origin of order represented by the yin and yang chi was between existence and nothingness, representing the laws of heaven and earth. At this level, to improve one's essence, one could only advance to nothingness, achieve primeval chaos and nothingness. It's more difficult to improve one's essence, but it's not difficult to improve one's strength. The great Tao was the foundation, and to improve one's essence was naturally not easy. However, to only improve one's combat strength was a different concept. I'm only at the mortal-immortal realm now. According to the calculation method of Celestial Emperor Huang's era, the mortal-immortal realm strength is close to that of an immortal king. Liu looked at the desolate tower in his hand and nodded with a smile. In Celestial Emperor Huang's era, true immortal, immortal king, quasi-immortal emperor, and immortal emperor. These are the highest level of strength. With a wave of his hand, he put the dark treasure wheel and desolate tower into the resource vault. Liu turned to look at Zhong Jiao in the vault. This Zhong Jiao is a creature from Celestial Emperor Huang's era. To understand the cultivation method of Celestial Emperor Huang's era, I have to start with him. Liu waved his hand and let the system scan Zhong Jiao's soul memory and record it into the resource vault. Mortal realm, immortal realm, immortal realm. In the era of Celestial Emperor Huang, the path of cultivation was divided into 3 major realms. Liu looked at Zhong Jiao's memories in the resource library and nodded slightly. With a sweep of his divine sense, all the information in Zhong Jiao's memories was transmitted to his divine sense, allowing him to decipher them one by one. This path of cultivation is really ancient. Moments later, Liu had completely understood the path of cultivation in Zhong Jiao's memories. The cultivation methods of the Huangtian Emperor's era were extremely primitive. The cultivation method of the human race is actually based on the innately powerful divine beasts, imitating the divine beasts' innate divine abilities, thus gaining strength. The mortal realm cultivates the body, the god realm cultivates the spirit, and the immortal realm cultivates the origin. The so-called precious techniques are actually the innate abilities of the ancient divine beasts. After comprehending the path of cultivation in Zhong Jiao's memories, Liu also had a better understanding of the cultivation methods of the era of Emperor Huangti. Zhong Jiao's strength is equivalent to the Great Emperor realm. In the era of Heavenly Emperor Huang, this realm was called supremacy. It was already the peak of the immortal realm and was only one step away from becoming an immortal. The information of the ancient chaos era flowed through Liu's mind. The more he analyzed and comprehended, the brighter Liu's eyes shone. As expected, the more primitive the cultivation method, the more it reflects the laws of heaven and earth and the origin of the great Tao. With a wave of his hand, a mysterious talisman appeared in front of Liu. The scarlet talisman emitted an immense heat as if formed from flames. This is Zhong Jiao's innate precious technique. Liu stared at the talisman in front of him and extended a finger to touch it. A spark of fire flashed, and the talisman disappeared without a trace. This talisman is essentially a description of the laws of heaven and earth. Although Zhong Jiao's innate divine ability is only a part of the laws of fire, it is also very clear. After comprehending Zhong Jiao's innate divine ability and analyzing the law of fire runes, Liu's fire elemental power of the 5 elements increased slightly. As expected, the path of comprehending the laws of heaven and earth is the correct one. Integrating the laws of heaven and earth of all realms, ultimately turning them into one's own laws. Tracing back to the origin and becoming primeval. This is my path. Zhong Jiao's precious technique runes increase Liu's fire elemental power slightly, further proving the correctness of this path. Therefore, I will study the laws of heaven and earth next. It was no longer the chaotic antiquity era, and the laws of heaven and earth had deteriorated. To study the laws of heaven and earth of this era, Liu already had a plan. Cultivation methods naturally represent the laws of heaven and earth of this era. The power system of any world would naturally reflect the laws of heaven and earth of that world. I started with the innate sage body, Tao embryo, and the infinite scripture, but I can't ignore the other imperial scriptures. When he first came to this world, Li had already scanned the resources of the entire world with the power of the 9 dragons coffin, pulling 9 dragons. Naturally, there was no lack of cultivation methods. Demonic sky-devouring scripture, indestructible heaven scripture, eternal universe scripture, void scripture, Tao scripture, Western Emperor scripture, Taiwan scripture, Nirvana scripture, immortal scripture, 9 revolutions heaven scripture, Taiyin scripture, Taiyang scripture, since the mythological era. Countless cultivation methods created by the great emperors of this era appeared before Liu's eyes one by one. His divine soul shook, and the inky flow mind splitting technique was used, and his divine soul was split into billions of pieces. Imperial scriptures flowed into his mind, and he continuously analyzed, interpreted, and comprehended them. With Liu's current cultivation, under the effect of the inky flow mind splitting technique, it didn't take long for Liu to decipher and comprehend many of the imperial scriptures. One Tao suppressing all Tao. This is the great emperor hypostasis. When a great emperor achieved the Tao, he comprehended the heart of heaven and earth, using his own Tao law to imprint heaven and earth. One Tao suppressing all Tao. This was the reason why there was only one great emperor in each era. Because of the restrictions of the laws of heaven and earth, there was only one place for the heavenly heart imprint, which allowed only one person to imprint their own Tao law into heaven and earth and suppress all Tao. In fact, the great emperor apostasis is just a privilege given by the laws of heaven and earth. The power comes from heaven and earth, and not completely from oneself. After analyzing all the imperial scriptures of this era, Liu already had a thorough understanding of the great emperor hypostasis. In terms of combat power, the great success holy physique is still inferior to the great emperor. Although they can be evenly matched in a short period of time, the great success holy physique will still lose after a long time. The great emperor had the heavenly heart imprint, and his endurance surpassed that of the great success holy physique. In a long battle, the great success holy physique would still not be able to drag on. However, in terms of cultivation future, the great success holy physique will surpass the great emperor. If one wants to become a mortal immortal, the heavenly heart imprint will be a burden. The laws of heaven and earth don't allow one to become an immortal. If one doesn't cut off the heavenly heart imprint, one will naturally not be able to become a mortal immortal. After analyzing all the imperial scriptures, Liu had gained a lot, and the use of his own power had become more varied. With the matter origin and order origin as the foundation, the power of all the imperial scriptures could be reproduced in Liu's hands. However, these imperial scriptures are still not enough to analyze the laws of heaven and earth. Liu raised his head to look at the sky, and a smile appeared on his face. This world has heavenly tribulations. Naturally, heavenly tribulations are the manifestation of the laws of heaven and earth. Therefore, Liu planned to observe other people's heavenly tribulations. Chapter 533. Boom! A bolt of lightning struck. Lightning flashed and thunder rumbled. It's just the tribulation of dragon transformation. I, Li Shu, am a genius. How can a mere tribulation of dragon transformation be worth mentioning? A young girl with a tall and slender figure, slender and straight legs, and a beautiful face stood proudly in the sea of lightning, holding a crescent saber in her hand. Boom! The lightning was like a dragon, and the thunder was like a tide. Heaven and earth were filled with silver light. The girl, Li Shu, swung her saber, shattering the thunder and destroying the lightning. Under the tribulation of dragon transformation, she was valiant and calm. The girl, who was focused on transcending the tribulation, did not notice that while she was transcending, a young man in a white robe and a golden crown was standing in the void with a smile on his face. It was no wonder that the girl did not notice. Not to mention that Li Yu's cultivation level was thousands of miles above hers. More importantly, the tribulation of this world would shift. If one person was transcending the tribulation and there were others present, it would also trigger the tribulation of others. Therefore, when a cultivator transcended the tribulation in this world, no one would watch. That was simply courting death. The tribulation is the manifestation of the laws of heaven and earth. Li stood with his hands behind his back and looked at the tribulation clouds in the sky with a smile. The tribulation that no one dared to watch had no effect on Li Yu. It was as if it could not detect Li Yu's existence at all. Since the laws of heaven and earth have already been revealed, I'll have to observe carefully. With a thought, his spiritual force broke through the sky and plunged into the tribulation clouds. The mighty spiritual force washed over, and the laws of heaven and earth manifested in the tribulation were revealed to Li Yu's spiritual force. The laws of heaven and earth, the way of material transformation, the way of the 5 elements, and the way of order. His spiritual force swept out and analyzed the laws of heaven and earth manifested in the tribulation. However, why is it gone? Inadvertently, Li Yu suddenly realized that he seemed to have used too much strength. When he was comprehending the laws of the tribulation, he did not pay attention and directly destroyed the tribulation with his spiritual force. Boom! Heaven and earth raged. Thunder roared. It was as if Li Yu's action of directly annihilating the heavenly tribulation of dragon transformation had caused the laws of heaven and earth to retaliate. In an instant, the wind and clouds surged and the sky changed color. The entire sky was shrouded in dense tribulation clouds. The dark clouds covered the sky and covered the sun. Boom! The sound of thunder shook the heavens and earth. The lightning was incomparably vast. It was as if the Milky Way was pouring down from the 9 heavens. The thunder was like an ocean. Crack! A shattering sound rang out in the void, as if the space itself had been shattered. Vast and mighty lightning swept across the heavens and earth. The dazzling lightning was incomparably blazing. Boom! Thunder shook the world, and lightning flashed like a tide. The whole world turned into a world of thunder and lightning. Heaven and earth were destroyed, and all living things were annihilated. The vast and boundless power caused one's hair to stand on end. How is this possible? Li Shu, who was in the middle of transcending her tribulation, had been calm and relaxed just a moment ago. But at this moment, she was scared witless by the shocking momentum of the heavenly tribulation lightning. I'm only going through the tribulation of dragonization. Such a heavenly tribulation should already be an immortal foundation heavenly tribulation. The valiant girl's hand that was holding the crescent saber was trembling. I haven't done anything outrageous, have I? Is there a need to be so ruthless for a mere tribulation of dragonization? Heavenly tribulation was something that one couldn't even escape from. Other than facing it head-on, what else could one do? The girl gritted her teeth and gathered all the strength in her body, intending to fight to the death. Look at how scared you are. Li Yu looked down at the girl who was determined to fight to the death. He smiled and shook his head. Since I'm the one who caused it, I naturally can't implicate you. With a wave of his hand, an invisible curtain of light fell on the girl, adding a layer of protection to this innocent girl who was implicated. Boom! The tribulation lightning struck down, and the destructive power tore through the void. Yeah, the girl shouted angrily. She waved the crescent saber in her hand and used all the strength in her body to slash out the most brilliant strike. Boom! With one slash, the lightning was annihilated. That heavenly tribulation lightning that could destroy the heavens and earth was actually suddenly destroyed with a single slash. I've actually become so strong? The girl was shocked, and her face was filled with disbelief. Boom! Another devastating bolt of tribulation lightning struck down. Heaven and earth shook. The void wailed. Again? I'm going all out. The girl shouted angrily and slashed out with her saber again. Then, the heavenly lightning that could destroy heaven and earth was destroyed with a single slash. This isn't an illusion. It's real. I've actually become so strong. The young girl was startled, and then she was overjoyed. She waved her snow-white saber as she wished, and the destructive heavenly tribulation lightning was annihilated by the young girl's saber light. Ha ha! My saber technique has reached the large success stage, destroying the tribulation lightning with one slash. Who in the dragonization realm can defeat me? The girl laughed, and the saber in her hand became faster and colder. The saber light was like a crescent moon, extremely dazzling. All right, this was all an illusion. Liu needed the girl to attract the tribulation lightning, but he couldn't let her be struck to death. Hence, he added a layer of protection for her. That invisible light screen blocked 99% of the tribulation lightning's power, leaving only a trace of power that wasn't even at the dragonization realm. Hence, the girl destroyed the tribulation lightning with one slash. She was mighty and invincible. Such a powerful force gave the young girl the illusion that she was invincible, that she was a peerless genius. Liu naturally didn't have the time to care about what the girl was thinking. He was focused on understanding the laws of heaven and earth revealed by the tribulation. His divine soul swept through the thunderclouds, and Liu deciphered and analyzed the laws of the tribulation. Not long after, the heavenly tribulation clouds that covered the sky were annihilated by Liu. Rumble. After the thunderclouds were destroyed, the wind and clouds started to blow again. This time, Liu was the one who initiated the tribulation. After understanding 2 tribulations, Liu had gained a lot. How could Liu let go of such a good opportunity? There's more tribulation lightning? The girl holding the saber was shocked, but a trace of joy appeared on her face. Legend has it that only the truly heaven-defying geniuses would have such a tribulation. Could it be that my hidden talent is that of a peerless genius? The girl puffed out her chest and raised her head. Come, I, Li Shu, will be known as a genius and shock the world. Boom! Lightning flashed, and lightning flashed like a tide. Inside the lightning, there were many glorious and majestic figures. That's the arch, an ancient arch. I'm just a dragonization realm cultivator, but I have to face such a tribulation. My aptitude is already heaven-defying enough to reach the level of an ancient emperor. The girl raised her head proudly, and the snow-white saber in her hand slashed through the void. The saber light was like the moon sweeping through the world. The magnificent ancient thearchs were cut down by the girl's saber. They couldn't even block a casual attack from the girl. I've become so powerful. Even the ancient thearchs are no match for me. I'm Li Shu. No, I'm the heaven-suppressing arch. Heaven-suppressing arch, suppressing heaven and earth. The snow-white saber light swept across, and the ancient thearchs were annihilated. The girl named Li Shu, who called herself the heaven-suppressing arch, was getting more and more delusional. Heaven-suppressing the arch Li Shu, the owner of the book group. A beautiful girl. Chapter 534. Ha! The emperors of the ancients are just SOSO. The girl who called herself the heaven-suppressing emperor defeated all the emperors of the ancients. Being invincible was so lonely. Boom! Lightning struck again. This time, there were not only emperors of the ancients, but also emperor weapons. Myths, 9 heavenly venerables. Immortal slaying, sword formation. Dozens of emperors and emperor weapons swarmed over. Come, Heaven's suppressing emperor is never weaker than anyone. Watch me conquer the world and become the strongest. The girl's illusion was getting worse. Under the saber light, the emperor weapons were shattered and the emperors slashed down. Immortal slaying sword formation was destroyed with one saber strike. Myths and 9 heavenly venerables slashed down with one saber strike. Under the crescent saber, no one was a match for it. Boom! The lightning that appeared again was no longer emperor weapons or ancient emperors. Clang! The brilliant immortal bell annihilated the laws of heaven and earth. Boom! The desolate pagoda that connected the heavens and the earth shattered the eternal space-time. Wong! The dark and eerie wheel stirred the reincarnation of heaven and earth. Following closely behind were countless imprints of the elixir of immortality. At this moment, heaven and earth collapsed, time and space were destroyed, and the void turned into chaos. The earth-shattering heavenly tribulation shook the entire universe. Tribulation of a great emperor. Who is it? Who became an emperor? Damn it. How can someone become an emperor? How can someone become an emperor at this time? The heavenly Tao is unfair. Give me another 500 years. I just need another 500 years, and I will be able to break through. The path to becoming an emperor has been cut off. We will never be able to rise again. At this moment, all the cultivators in the world were shocked. Countless people looked at the vast sea of lightning and saw the destructive power of the lightning. They looked up to the sky and sighed with grief and indignation. I became an emperor? This heaven suppression emperor was a bit stunned. I'm only a dragon realm cultivator. Why did I undergo the tribulation of a great emperor? Could it be that I really have the potential to become an emperor? The heaven-suppressing emperor's hand that was holding the saber began to tremble. Boom! Thunder rumbled, and the immortal artifact imprint came crashing down. Slash! The heaven-suppressing emperor roared and slashed the saber in his hand. Then, the immortal bell was destroyed. The ancient desolate tower was destroyed. The treasured wheel was shattered. The immortal medicine's imprints were all annihilated. Heaven's heart was revealed here. The great Tao of heaven and earth was revealed to the world. Good. The laws of heaven and earth and the great Tao of the world are all within my sight. The opportunity that Li Yu had been waiting for had finally arrived. He had spent so many cultivation techniques and caused such a huge commotion just to trigger the martial monarch tribulation. When the heavenly heart manifested, Li Yu would be able to comprehend the Tao laws of the entire world. There's no need to worry about the Heaven's Core imprint. Li Yu didn't want to become a great emperor, so he tossed aside the Heaven's Core imprint. Divine light surged out, and he split his consciousness into billions of strands to analyze and decipher the laws of heaven and earth. While Li Yu was gaining a lot from comprehending the laws of heaven and earth, the Heaven Suppression Emperor was scratching his head anxiously. Become an emperor? Become an emperor? I can't do it. Even though the great Tao of heaven and earth and the Heaven's Core imprint had appeared, the girl who called herself Heaven-Suppressing Great Emperor didn't imprint her own great Tao laws, because she didn't have any great Tao laws at all. Why is it like this? Why is it like this? The girl roared angrily and anxiously. How could I have caused such a big misunderstanding? When Liu scanned the laws of heaven and earth and saw the girl who called herself Heaven Suppression Emperor, he realized that he had caused her a lot of trouble. This is too big of a misunderstanding. Liu waved his hand. The Heaven's Core disappeared, and the great Tao didn't appear. The earth-shaking abnormal phenomenon had dissipated, and the great Emperor's aura had disappeared without a trace. The Heaven's Core disappeared, and the great Emperor's aura didn't appear. That person didn't become an emperor? Could it be that he was killed by the heavenly tribulation? That's great. That's great. We still have a chance. Sensing the dissipation of the great Emperor's aura and the disappearance of the Heaven's Core, everyone who was paying attention to this scene heaved a sigh of relief. Then, everyone sighed inwardly. The path to becoming an emperor is extremely dangerous. Even if one is just one step away, there is still the danger of death. We must be careful. I, I missed the opportunity to become an emperor. Heaven's suppression, great emperor beat his chest and stomped his feet, filled with regret and hatred. Young girl, you never had any chance to become an emperor. This is just an illusion. All of this was a heavenly tribulation that Li Yu was constantly drawing out and had nothing to do with achieving the Tao. Li Yu shook his head. This kind of experience is not a good thing for you. Forget all of this. With a wave of his hand and a sweep of his soul, Li Yu directly erased the girl's so-called invincible, killing an emperor in one strike experience. Borrowing your hands, I have also obtained the laws of heaven and earth. This karma also needs to be settled. Li Yu flicked his finger, and a purple dot of light pierced through the air and hit the girl. I'll give you the bloodline of a Xiantian Dao embryo and settle this karma. As for whether or not you will be captured by the big black dog and give birth to a monkey for Yi Fan, that is none of my business. Li Yu laughed, flicked his sleeves, and disappeared. Heaven's suppression great emperor rubbed his temples, feeling a little dizzy. He vaguely felt that he had forgotten something, but he didn't discover what he had forgotten. What's wrong with me? The young girl suddenly discovered that her divine soul was actually able to connect with the great Tao of heaven and earth, as if she was in a state of unity with the heavens and earth at any time. Could it be that my passing of the dragon transformation tribulation has stimulated my own potential? My current aptitude has already undergone a complete transformation. I can also be considered a genius of this generation. Heaven's suppression great emperor sheathed his saber and stepped on the path back with his head held high. His scattered hair fluttered in the air, looking valiant and heroic with an extraordinary aura. With the laws of heaven and earth in hand, I still need to properly comprehend them. Li Yu returned to the eternal immortal palace and sat down in the main hall. He split his attention into billions of ways to comprehend the laws of heaven and earth that he had just collected. The origin of this world is countless times stronger than the sorcerer world. To comprehend the laws of heaven and earth and integrate them into my own origin, it won't be as easy as it was in the sorcerer world. Li Yu scanned with his divine soul and immediately discovered that the laws of heaven and earth in this world were more rigorous than the sorcerer world. It was also more complex and vast. To comprehend them one by one was not something that could be done in a day or two. Anyway, I have nothing to do during this period. I can go into seclusion to comprehend the laws of heaven and earth. The source of darkness and chaos have been swept clean. Apart from the sovereigns and the immortal emperor, there was no one else worthy of his attention in this world. Li Yu went into seclusion with peace of mind. The origin of matter, the origin of order, the way of the changes in the energy of heaven and earth, the transformation of all things in the world, the withering and flourishing of plants, the reincarnation of life and death, time passed day by day. In the main hall of the immortal palace, time and space flowed. The four seasons alternated the birth and death of all things in the world and the reincarnation of all beings in the world. Endless visions appeared above Li Yu's head. Endless mysteries, endless brilliance, and the aura on Li Yu's body was vast and unfathomable. Chapter 535. Time passed day by day. The Grand Empyrean had flattened the life forbidden zone, eliminated the source of darkness and chaos, and shocked the world with his might. However, a senior expert like the Grand Empyrean would naturally not pay attention to the struggle of the younger generation on the Emperor's Road. Heroes and geniuses from all over the world stepped onto the ancient path of the starry sky to fight against Imperial Pass. Other than Zhou, Yi Fan, and the other geniuses of the present era, some ancient existences also gradually appeared. Boom! In the depths of Imperial Pass, a loud explosion erupted in the void. Divine radiance filled the sky, and an incomparably tyrannical power fiercely attacked. A huge phoenix nest shrouded in purple light broke through the void and disappeared in a flash. Immortal Phoenix Nest. undying heavenly queen. During this period of time, the immortal phoenix nest had appeared in the world. The immortal heavenly queen had brought the 8 great divine generals and rampaged through the world. The Empyrean was in seclusion, and the great emperor did not appear. In this era, the quasi-emperor was already the strongest power. The undying heavenly queen and the 8 great divine generals were all at the quasi-emperor realm. 9 quasi-emperors in this era were almost the most powerful forces in the world. The divine court was flattened by the phoenix nest. The master of the divine court, the one who claimed to be the one who will achieve the Tao, the peak quasi-emperor who claimed to be the great emperor, was directly crushed by the undying heavenly queen and the 8 great divine generals. Facing the undying heavenly queen's ferocious might, the woodcutter old man built a Tao palace on the ruins of the ancient heavenly court. The gods' organization also appeared in the world. Yifan's newly established heavenly court and the Xianyuan Holy Land created by Zhou Yi also established their own sects to contend against the undying heavenly queen's forces. Heroes vying for supremacy, geniuses vying for hegemony. The entire world sank into a long war. Time slowly passed, and in the blink of an eye, 10 years had passed. The great Tao returns to its source, heaven and man as one. Within the eternal immortal manner, the phenomenon that filled the sky dissipated, and Li Yu's figure appeared within the light. After 10 years of comprehension, I finally comprehended the laws of this world in my heart. Li Yu looked at the horizon, a smile on his face. At this moment, Li Yu's eyes had traced back to the origin of everything in the world, seeing through its essence. Everything in the world is within the rules. Wind, cloud, thunder, lightning, frost, rain, snow, spring, summer, autumn, winter, severe cold, summer, heat. All of these were the laws of heaven and earth. Everything was the order of heaven and earth. Matter constructs the form, order constructs the laws. Everything in the world and all living beings in the world are born from the interweaving of matter and order. Starting from the origin, Li Yu looked at the world from the perspective of the laws of heaven and earth. He found that everything was a law and everything was order. Unfortunately, the heavenly Tao is damaged and the laws are incomplete. To completely grasp all the laws of this world, I'm afraid that only the ancient chaos era is possible. Thinking of this, Li Yu laughed involuntarily. So the reason I trace back to the era of Heavenly Emperor Huang is actually very simple. It's just to analyze the laws of the world. In Celestial Emperor Huang's era, the path of cultivation was based on the innate abilities of ancient god beasts. Every type of bone mar treasure technique was in fact a manifestation of the world's rules. Therefore, I must go to the ancient chaos era. Li Yu smiled and looked in the direction of the Big Dipper constellation. His gaze pierced through the void and saw the Empress in white sitting in the Chaos Dragon nest. Vicious, are you still waiting? Vicious wanted to wait for Yifan to become an immortal in the mortal world. He wanted to see if Yifan would be able to restore everything in the past and regain his previous life. It's a pity that the soul of that youth has long since dissipated. Even if Yifan becomes an immortal in the mortal world, he won't be able to recover the memories of that life. Li Yu shook his head. Vicious will not give up. I will continue to wait. In this era, Li Yu had already harvested everything that he could. If he wanted to reap any more rewards, the only way was to wait for Yifan to become an immortal in the mortal world. Li Yu could also use the process of Yifan becoming an immortal in the mortal world to further comprehend the laws of the world. But that's too long. Without spending hundreds of thousands of years, it would be impossible for Yifan to become an immortal in the mortal world. How could you have so much time to waste here? Let's just end the conflict of this era. Emperor Wu Shi had been alone in the gap between the two worlds, fighting with the immortal emperor and another mortal immortal for tens of thousands of years. In order to refine a supreme immortal artifact, the sovereign had used this process to comprehend his own cultivation and advance his cultivation. He wanted to pursue the path ahead and see if there was any possibility of further progress on the path of immortals. But you want to refine the entire universe. Have you ever asked me about it? This world is very important to me. In the past, there was the era of Heavenly Emperor Huang, and in the future, there would be the source of darkness that would bring chaos to the world. I can't let you harm such a world. Li Yu smiled as he stood up, turned his head, and called out to Wang Shu, who was cultivating in the side hall of the Immortal Mansion. Wang Shu, we have something to do. Yes, sir. A cold light flashed, and Wang Shu's figure, which was as cold as the moon, appeared in front of Li Yu. 10 years had passed, and Wang Shu had cultivated the ice soul divine light. His entire body emitted a bone-chilling aura, and his cultivation base had become even stronger. The origin of the ice soul divine light was extraordinary. It was originally a technique that Li Yu had derived from the supreme realm of another world. Li Yu had analyzed the supreme realm. With his realm of origin, after re-deriving it, the ice soul divine light could be cultivated into the Khanate cold Qi, Taichu Motetsu, Zhangxian, Qilin, Black Tortoise, Qingyang, Zixiao, returned quickly. With a flick of his finger, several message talismans broke through the air and passed the message to Li Yu's subordinates. These people were not the main force, but even the undying emperor occupied 8 seats and had a retinue. Li Yu could not be inferior to him. Buzz, buzz, buzz. Several transmission talismans flashed. Zhang Xian and the others broke through the void with the transmission talismans and returned to the eternal immortal mansion in an instant. Greetings, Celestial Master. After returning, they bowed to Li Yu. Although this world has calmed down, there's still some disasters left behind. I plan to eliminate the disasters of this world once and for all. All of you, follow me and conquer the void between the 2 realms. The sky's sovereign has ordered us to follow him to the death. These people had all become Li Yu's subordinates, so naturally, they wouldn't have any objections. Very good. Li Yu nodded and led the group out of the eternal immortal mansion. Yi Fan has already placed my talisman in a suitable position. If the Emperor wants to refine this world, he will no longer be able to do so. Li Yu waved his hand and put away the eternal immortal mansion. With a sweep of his divine soul, he discovered that the mission he had given to Yi Fan and the others had already been completed. Since that's the case, let's go and see what kind of cultivation the other immortals in the mortal world have. After 10 years of comprehending the laws of heaven and earth, Li Yu discovered that his strength had increased again. However, without a specific reference, it was hard to determine what realm he was in. The path to immortality is actually very simple. As long as one has enough strength, anywhere is the path to immortality. Li Yu smiled and extended his hand to strike the air. Boom! The world shook and the void shattered. Under Li Yu's palm, a huge hole was created in the void, revealing a vast and boundless world. This is the sky's sovereign is making a move again. What is the Grand Empyrean doing? With this palm strike, the world shook and everyone in the world was alarmed. Chapter 536. What shocking move did the Grand Empyrean make? The earth-shattering sound of space shattering shocked countless cultivators in the entire world. 10 years ago, the Grand Empyrean had swept through the world. Every time he made a move, it would definitely be earth-shattering. After 10 years of silence, the Grand Empyrean made his move again. This time, what kind of commotion would it cause? Countless cultivators were waiting with bated breath. Is this the immortal domain? The Grand Empyrean pierced through the immortal domain with a single strike. In a huge hole that was torn open in the void, immortal light was like rain. The multicolored light was boundless, faintly revealing a mysterious and unfathomable world. The Grand Empyrean, he is too strong. Seeing this scene, countless cultivators trembled. To open up the path to immortality with a single strike, what kind of terrifying act was this? That's not the immortal domain. In the northern Dipper Star region, Ruthless raised his head and looked in the direction of the shattered void. He said this indifferently, then lowered his head and remained silent. Not the immortal domain where... What is this place? What is the Grand Empyrean doing? Leaf Fan Sien hugged little Nan Nan, his face full of shock as he looked in the direction of a shattered void, unable to make sense of it. Ruthless did not reply, nor did he raise his head. They entered that world. Is that the immortal domain? The Grand Empyrean brought people into the immortal domain. Under the shocked gazes of countless people, the Grand Empyrean brought 6 people and stepped into the shattered void, entering another world. Sky Sovereign, is this the immortal domain? Stepping into the shattered void, everyone arrived at a vast and mysterious world. This is naturally not the immortal domain. Liu smiled as he looked at this vast and boundless world. This was the border between the immortal domain and the mortal realm. Although it was also a world, it could be seen as the gap between the 2 realms. This world has a small amount of longevity material, and there are also countless experts. Liu raised his head to look at the horizon. With a touch of his soul, he instantly understood the essence of this world. Is this a world that evolved from a part of the 9 heavens and 10 earths that collapsed during the chaotic ancient era? With Liu's cultivation, he was able to see through the world in an instant. The essence of this world was completely displayed before his eyes. D-Zune, to be able to make such a big move, you could be considered an amazing person. Liu smiled. It's a pity that your plan ended up in vain. Boom! At this moment, a golden rainbow streaked across the horizon. A figure in ancient clothing and a shocking aura stood in the golden rainbow. There are actually barbarians from the lower realm crossing over today. The golden rainbow arrived in an instant. The figure in an ancient robe glanced at Liu and the others with an arrogant face. He curled his lips in disdain. Has the lower realm's path of immortalization opened again? Consider yourselves lucky. Where did you come from? Quickly report your name. I can consider taking you in as my followers. Above the golden rainbow, the ancient robed figure looked down with an arrogant expression. Liu's palm broke through the void. Although there was a huge commotion in the outside world, there was not much movement in this world. In the eyes of the ancient robed figure, Liu and the others were a group of lucky people who had stepped onto this world from the path of immortalization. How dare you? How dare you be so rude? Hearing this person's words and seeing his arrogant expression, the few people beside Liu were instantly enraged. How dare he insult the grand celestial venerable? How audacious of him! How dare you? Rude? The ancient robed figure on the golden rainbow snorted disdainfully. Barbarians from the lower realm, you have to understand what this place is. Even if you're the supremes of the mortal realm, you have to behave yourself here. I am an envoy under Lord Immortal Phoenix. How dare you disobey Lord Immortal Phoenix? Do you want to die? Pfft. How interesting. Liu chuckled. Immortal Phoenix? The Immortal Emperor changed his name again? Even the Immortal Emperor does not dare to be impudent in front of me. You are just an errand boy, yet you are so arrogant? What gave you the courage? How dare you, barbarian? You are courting death. The ancient robed figure was furious. A feather fan appeared in his hand. The feathers were as beautiful as rainbows, and the mighty aura shook heaven and earth. You are the one who is courting death. Liu reached out and grabbed, and a giant palm that covered the sky appeared out of thin air. He grabbed the ancient robed figure who had been showing off for a long time in his palm. Ah, you! Such monstrous power made the ancient robed man's face pale with fright. Your divine soul memory is still useful to me. Liu waved his hand and put this person into the resource vault. This was also an emperor supremacy. From his memory, Liu found that 80% of this world had been taken over by the immortal emperor. The immortal emperor and another mortal immortal of this world, the Blue Phoenix Immortal, had joined forces to rule the entire world. Emperor Wu Shi and some natives of this world who were unwilling to submit to the immortal emperor had fought the immortal heavenly phoenix and the Blue Phoenix Immortal for tens of thousands of years. Being surrounded by 2 mortal immortals, even though Wu Shi is powerful, he can only hold on and restrain them. It is basically impossible for him to win. Liu looked at the distant sky and smiled. Emperor Wu Shi, You must have had a hard time all these years, right? After all, I started with the Immortal Sutra and the Khanate Saint Body. I still have to help you. Turning his head to look at the people around him, Li Yu instructed, there are still powerful enemies in this world. Follow me and flatten this world. We will conquer the world. We will follow your orders, Heavenly Master. Everyone cupped their fists and raised their weapons. Their blood was boiling, and their morale was high. Let's go. Li Yu waved his hand and led everyone into the sky. The mighty brilliance covered the sky and earth like a raging tide, sweeping across the world. Over there, when this phenomenon appeared, the two sides who were constantly fighting in this world were shocked. The void trembled just now. Fengling has already gone to check it out. Judging from the current situation, Fengling must have been killed. The Immortal Emperor swung his sword to block the bell of Immortal Emperor and frowned slightly. Someone from the lower world broke through. Fengling didn't recruit them, so they must be from the human race. The Immortal Emperor was famous in the human world, and the alien races regarded him as a god. With the Immortal Emperor's status among the alien races, Fengling only needed to mention his name, and there would naturally be people who would join him. At this moment, Fengling had not returned, and the monstrous sea of light was very provocative. These people could only be from the human race. It's just a few **king human kings. How big a wave can they cause? The Immortal Emperor ignored the light that swept across the world and focused on joining forces with the Blue Phoenix Immortal to fight Emperor Wushi. In the Immortal Emperor's opinion, as long as he killed Emperor Wushi, the other rebels would be easily crushed. There was no need to worry at all. Then, he would be in trouble. Li Yu did not reveal the aura of the mortal world immortal. Even when he killed Fengling with one slap, he restrained his own aura. This was not because Li Yu wanted to hide his cultivation level to make it easier for him to show off. It was because he did not know how famous he was in the chaotic ancient era. If the Immortal Emperor saw him coming, he would turn around and run. Then he would have to chase him everywhere, which was really troublesome. Now, it was much more convenient to quietly approach and catch them all in one fell swoop. The mighty light broke through the sky, and a handsome young man in a white robe and a golden crown stood with his hands behind his back, looking at the two sides with a smile. Boom! An immortal phoenix spread its wings like blades, splitting the world. Whoosh! A blue phoenix spread its feathers, shattering space and time. Clang! The bell rang, sweeping across the world. A majestic figure stood on the golden bell. He was heroic, dignified, and wise. With every move, heaven and earth trembled, and all living beings bowed their heads. His demeanor was unparalleled in the world. Who was the peak at the end of the immortal road? The Tao of no beginning was empty. He was no beginning. Emperor Wushi, do you need help? Li Yu stood in the void with his hands behind his back and nodded at Emperor Wushi with a smile. Hearing Li Yu's words and seeing Li Yu's figure, the Immortal Emperor and Emperor Wushi were shocked. Grand Empyrean. Emperor Wushi and the Immortal Emperor exclaimed at the same time. However, Emperor Wushi's exclamation was filled with surprise, while the Immortal Emperor's exclamation was filled with shock. Chapter 537. Grand Celestial Venerable, he's still alive. The Immortal Phoenix turned into a human figure. He was extraordinarily handsome and majestic. He looked like he was only in his 20s. This person was the Immortal Emperor. After the era of the Venerable Sovereign, his might shook the ancient times, and he was an unrivaled supreme being. The Immortal Emperor was cruel and merciless. His path to becoming a mortal immortal was different from others. He bathed in the Emperor's blood and plundered the origin of other emperors, using it as fuel to ignite his own immortal flame. The Battle Saint Emperor had died in his hands. The Grand Emperor had died in his hands. Since ancient times, at least a dozen emperors had been killed by the Immortal Emperor's sneak attacks. Of course, Li Yu didn't care about the Immortal Emperor's character at all. The key reason why he wanted to go against the Immortal Emperor was an Immortal Phoenix, a blue wand, and two mortal immortal divine beasts. These things were very useful To Li Yu, Grand Celestial Venerable? What's his background? Beside the immortal emperor, Blue Luan turned back into human form. This was a young man in a blue robe. He had a handsome face like a woman. Qing Luan held a feather-like sword that was 5 feet long. She frowned as she looked at Li Yu and asked the immortal Sky Emperor, "You're from this world, so you don't know much about ancient secrets. Rumor has it that the Grand Celestial Venerable was a supreme in the chaotic ancient era. His cultivation is unfathomable and can't be underestimated." The immortal emperor frowned slightly and explained to the green phoenix, immortal venerable, beside him, It's just a rumor. We'll only know how strong he is after we fight." Qing Luan, the venerable immortal, snorted coldly and waved her sword, attacking Emperor No, beginning again. Blue light swept across the sky, annihilating everything and collapsing time and space. The power of the mortal immortal realm was released, and the entire world trembled. Clang! The bell of No beginning let out a long ring, and divine light suppressed the world. The divine bell blocked the power of Blue Luan's sword. "What are you talking about?" Hearing Blue Luan's words, the immortal emperor's expression changed slightly, and he shook his head. This Blue Luan was born in this world, so he was a little ignorant. Disregarding everything else, for the Grand Empyrean to be able to survive from the chaotic ancient era until now, he must be an immortal in the mortal world. How could one underestimate this kind of immortal who had conquered the world of mortals? More importantly, even if you're dissatisfied, don't say it out loud. You're giving me a lot of pressure by provoking me like this. The immortal Sky Emperor suddenly felt that he was a pig teammate. Originally, the immortal Sky Emperor had planned to use the excuse of teaming up to break through the void and enter the celestial realm, to trap the Grand Empyrean and prevent him from interfering. However, Venerable Qing Luan's words had already offended the Grand Empyrean. "Heavenly Venerable, please take action." Boundless Heavenly Emperor blocked Blue Phoenix's attack and invited Li Yu to join the battle. He had been entangled with the immortal Sky Emperor and the Green Phoenix, Immortal Venerable, for many years. Although the great Emperor Wuxi was powerful, he did not have enough help. Under the siege of the immortal Sky Emperor and Qing Luan, they could only be in a stalemate and could not win. At this moment, seeing Li Yu's arrival and hearing Li Yu's words, Boundless Heavenly Emperor was overjoyed. Grand Empyrean, only 3 immortals working together can break through the void and enter the celestial realm. Boundless Heavenly Emperor is only one person. Even if you help him, you can't enter the celestial realm. Why don't we work together? The immortal Sky Emperor was still unwilling to give up and planned to trap Li Yu with words. Although the immortal Sky Emperor did not think that Li Yu was stronger than him, it would be troublesome to have another immortal as an enemy, even if it was only at the level of Venerable Qing Luan. "If I want to enter the celestial realm, do I need to work with you?" Li Yu shook his head and pointed at the group of subordinates behind the immortal Sky Emperor. "That's the enemy. Wipe them out. The Heavenly Venerable orders us to wipe out the enemy. Kill Zhang Xian, Wang Shu, the ancient Qilin Emperor, the ancient Tortoise Emperor, the Azure Sun Emperor, and the Purple Firmament Emperor." All roared and charged forward with their weapons. The 6 great emperors worked together like a sharp blade and ruthlessly slashed into the rear of the immortal Sky Emperor's army. 6 paths of reincarnation fist. The great sage physique punched out, and a brilliant golden light burst out like a scorching sun hanging high in the sky. The mighty divine power was unstoppable. Ice Spirit Divine Light. A cold light rushed out of Wang Shu's hand. It was like the most extreme coldness in the world, as if it represented the origin of the cold power of heaven and earth. With a sweep of the attack, thousands of miles of ice were sealed, and countless enemies in front of him turned into ice sculptures. Qilin suppresses the earth, collapses the mountains, and cracks the earth. The ancient Qilin Emperor waved his Qilin staff, and with one strike, the earth collapsed. North Xianming, supreme of all water. The ancient Tortoise Emperor was a 10,000-year-old shut-in who liked to be quiet and did not like to move. The ancient Tortoise Emperor was known for his defensive power, and many enemies have been exhausted to death by him. However, this did not mean that he did not know how to fight. Every great emperor had to kill to become one. The ancient Tortoise Emperor directly revealed his black tortoise true body. He controlled the Tianshui Qi and turned it into a vast ocean. Like the Milky Way hanging upside down, he ruthlessly smashed down on the immortal Sky Emperor's army. Purple heaven, godly thunder. The sky was filled with lightning like a vast sea of lightning. The purple heaven great emperor stood in the sea of lightning as the lightning swept across the world. Green sun, dazzling sun. A green sun lantern shot into the sky, and the sky was filled with flames that burned everything in the world, including time and space. The 6 great emperors charged into the army and immediately caused a huge commotion. They directly flattened the rear of the immortal Sky Emperor's army. With the help of this new force, the morale of the cultivators on the side of Great Emperor Wushu's side was greatly boosted, and their battle cries shook the sky. Grand Celestial Venerable, do you really want to be my enemy? When the immortal Sky Emperor saw this, he was instantly furious and could not restrain his anger. Originally, he did not want to be enemies with Li Yu and wanted to trap Li Yu with words. However, he did not expect that Li Yu did not care about the rules at all and directly ordered his subordinates to attack. I have dominated the ancient times and am invincible. Even if you are someone from the chaotic ancient era, do you think I'm afraid of you? The immortal Sky Emperor waved his hand, and a 4-foot-long narrow saber was unsheathed and slashed down at Li Yu's head. Once a ruthless guy like the immortal Sky Emperor was ready to turn hostile, he naturally did not hesitate and directly attacked. Flying immortal waterfall, cutting clouds. Immortal clouds filled the air, and immortal light poured down like a waterfall. A bright saber light broke through the sky and slashed down. With one slash, heaven and earth collapsed, the void shattered, heaven and earth reversed, and time flowed backward. The attack of the mortal world immortal was unstoppable, shaking the past and present and shaking the future. Attacking first to gain the upper hand? Ruthless indeed. The mighty saber slashed down. Li Yu smiled and patted his waist. Sky Splitter, your opponent is here. Chop it up. Clang. With a shrill sword sound, the Sky Splitter sword broke through the sky. The sword light that penetrated the heavens and earth shot up into the sky, tearing space and shattering the void. The Sky Splitter sword immortal, together with the weapon spirit of the Sky Splitter Lord, was no weaker than the mortal world immortal. Boom! The saber and sword clashed, and an earth-shattering shock wave exploded. Crack! Under the immortal Sky Emperor's horrified gaze, the immortal heavenly saber was suddenly cut into 2 by the Sky Splitter sword. With one strike, the immortal heavenly saber was broken. The power of the grand, celestial venerable was unparalleled. Chapter 538. The Grand Empyrean is actually so strong. The undying heavenly blade broke into 2 pieces. The corner of the immortal emperor's mouth twitched, and his heart ached. In order to upgrade the undying heavenly blade to an immortal artifact, the immortal emperor had spent countless efforts. He didn't expect it to be cut in half by the immortal sword of the Grand Empyrean. Boom! Raging flames rose from the undying heaven blade. As the raging flames surged, the blade that had been broken into 2 realms merged into one, once again transforming into a complete long blade. Phoenix Nirvana? The undying heavenly blade gathered 5 types of immortal gold, the Crimson Phoenix Blood Gold, and the immortal emperor's own immortal phoenix blood. So this blade has the power of Nirvana rebirth? Li Yu glanced at it and understood the nature of the undying heavenly blade's rebirth. I'm afraid it won't be able to withstand this kind of Nirvana rebirth a few times. Li Yu directly released the Sky Splitter and let the weapon spirit attack on its own. With the power of the Sky Splitter, there would naturally be no surprise when facing the undying heavenly blade. So it's just relying on the strength of the immortal sword. Li Yu could see through the undying heavenly blade, and the immortal emperor could also see through the Sky Splitter. The power of the sky splitter made the immortal emperor feel apprehensive, but even if the undying heavenly blade was no match for it, it was not difficult for it to entangle the sky splitter. The undying heavenly blade is not my strongest technique. With a wave of his hand, he released the undying heavenly blade and had it entangle the sky splitter. The immortal emperor leaped up and put his hands together. Endless divine radiance bloomed in his hands. Immortal phoenix seal. The immortal emperor transformed into his immortal phoenix body and spread his wings as he swooped down. A pair of sharp claws erupted with endless radiance, revealing a boundless, immemorial divine mountain that blotted out the sky and covered the sun. This mountain was like a seal. The immemorial divine mountain that was like a seal descended from the sky, causing the sky to collapse and the earth to cave in. Under this vast and mighty power, space-time shattered, space collapsed, and time was thrown into chaos. Even space-time was obliterated by this seal like divine mountain collapsing. Rumor has it that in the immortal ancient era, there was a seal technique called sky overturning seal. When this seal appeared, yin and yang was in chaos, and heaven and earth. Under this seal, everything in the world was turned into nothingness. The immortal sky emperor's immortal phoenix seal was derived from the remnants of the immortal ancient heaven flipping seal. This was the undying emperor's killer move. Once the seal appeared, it was unstoppable. Even Emperor Wu Shi had been caught off guard by this attack and had been forced to retreat. With the power of this attack, the immortal emperor subdued the immortal green phoenix and ruled over 80% of this world. Unfortunately, this move consumed too much energy. With the cultivation of the immortal sky emperor, he could only make one attack. After one strike, he would have to recuperate for a very long time before he could use the immortal phoenix seal again. Otherwise, the immortal emperor had enough confidence to defeat No Beginning. Even so, the immortal sky emperor firmly believed that the grand celestial venerable would not be able to block this attack and would definitely be defeated. The immortal ancient era's heaven-flipping seal's remnant technique was something that even the Grand Empyrean couldn't block. This move is indeed extraordinary. Liyu's eyes narrowed when he saw the divine mountain seal that had destroyed the eternal space-time. He no longer underestimated it and became serious. In the myriad worlds, only I am the supreme. Liyu roared as he clenched his right fist and punched out heavily. Fist of the ruler. This punch was Liyu's Tao, the origin of matter, the origin of order, the will of martial arts, the will of the soul, and the cultivation of chi refinement were all in this punch. At the beginning of the chaos, yin and yang appeared, and heaven and earth were born together. It was like the first ray of light when heaven and earth were born. It broke through the darkness, broke through the chaos, and order was born here. Boom! The light that broke through the chaos was like the creation of heaven and earth. Yin and yang appeared, time and space flowed, and heaven and earth were born here. The mighty light fiercely bombarded the divine mountain seal, erupting with endless brilliance. Heaven and earth were black and yellow, and the universe was desolate. The sun and moon waxed and waned, and the stars were arranged. Winter came and went, and autumn harvested and winter stored. Leap over the years, and Lu Jiaoyang. Clouds rose and rain fell, and dew condensed into frost. Endless phenomena appeared, and the sky was filled with light. Under the torrent of this phenomenon, the divine mountain seal that blotted out the sky was like a clay figurine that had fallen into a torrential river. It silently melted and vanished. A mouthful of blood spurted out. The immortal emperor vomited 3 liters of blood, and his face was pale. How is this possible? The immortal emperor looked at Liyu with a face full of shock. He couldn't believe that his divine ability was directly shattered by Liyu. The immortal emperor was originally an immortal phoenix in the immortal realm. When he was young, he accidentally entered a rare space-time crack and fell into the mortal world. The immortal emperor wanted to return to the immortal realm and bathe in the emperor's blood in the mortal world. He became an immortal in the mortal world and became a peerless expert that had never been seen in the immortal realm. This immortal phoenix seal was a peerless divine ability passed down by the ancestors of the immortal realm. The immortal emperor was a genius and cultivated this divine ability to the extreme, surpassing all the ancestors who cultivated this divine ability. However, his invincible divine ability was shattered by a single blow. The immortal emperor couldn't believe the reality before his eyes. How can the Grand Empyrean be so powerful? How can he be so strong? The immortal emperor felt like the world was collapsing. Because I've improved again. After spending 10 years in the eternal immortal abode to analyze the laws of heaven and earth, Liu hadn't made a fundamental breakthrough in his realm, but his combat strength had improved. The immortal was equivalent to a quasi-immortal king in the chaotic antiquity era. Liu's strength had improved again and was equivalent to an immortal king. At the level of the immortal, every step forward in strength was a step up. The immortal emperor unleashed his strongest power, but still wasn't Liu's match. Take my seal as well. Liu took a step forward and appeared beside the immortal sky emperor. He waved his hand and slapped out. Countless hand seals kept changing. Great Void Palm, Tethagata seal, 9 mountain moving seals. As the countless hand seals changed, they finally turned into an ordinary palm. Inspired by the immortal phoenix seal, Liu had a new understanding of the hand seal ability. Sovereign seal. The palm strike didn't cause the sky to collapse or the earth to cave in. There was no power to reverse time and space, and there was no sound of the void shattering. With this palm strike, Liu's power was completely restrained and not a single bit leaked out. Therefore, this slap looked like an ordinary, light slap. However, the shock on the immortal emperor's face deepened. He was even more terrified than when he faced Liu's Dominator's fist earlier. 9 secrets in 1. Annihilation immortal art. The immortal emperor couldn't use the immortal phoenix seal anymore, but he still had the power to resist. He'd collected all 9 secrets and had the ability to combine them to use the annihilation immortal art. 9 secrets in 1, huh? Liu smiled and didn't mind the immortal emperor's move at all. Back then, Liu used the 9 esoteric secrets as his battle technique and studied it for a very long time. Now, the 9 secrets had been integrated into Liu's foundation, so they weren't his strongest power. It was an ordinary palm strike, but it was still sent out in an ordinary manner. The Tao was natural, returning to the original, and revealing the truth in the ordinary. The 9 secrets of annihilation combined into one was annihilated by Liu's simple slap. Then, the slap didn't stop. It seemed slow, but it was fast. It pierced through time and space, through all obstacles, and gently slapped the immortal emperor's head without any aura. Ha! With a soft sound, the immortal emperor's body stiffened. The immortal emperor, had been invincible since ancient times. I didn't expect that I would die here. After a bitter laugh, there was no more sound. A hero of a generation had fallen just like that. Lord Immortal Phoenix is dead? How is this possible? As soon as the immortal emperor died, his people were scared out of their wits and cried out in shock. Chapter 539. Brother Phoenix. On the other side, Qing Wan, who was fighting with Emperor Wu Shi, suddenly screamed crazily when she saw Liu kill the immortal emperor. Brother Phoenix. Qing Wan screamed crazily and ignored Emperor Wu Shi. She flapped her wings and flew towards Liu. Clang! The bell of no beginning slammed into Qing Wan's back, causing her feathers to fly and blood to splatter. However, Qing Wan didn't seem to care at all. She didn't care about her own injuries and rushed towards Liu crazily. Seeing this situation, Liu's body trembled. Thinking of the feminine appearance of the Green Phoenix Venerable, some indescribable guesses appeared in his mind. What the hell? It can't be, right? Liu felt them all over. He suddenly thought of the ambiguous relationship between the immortal emperor and the first divine general, and felt like he had discovered a certain truth. I was worried that you would be torn apart by no beginning. Now you're still intact. Very good. Liu waved his sleeves and kept the immortal emperor's immortal phoenix body. He then waved his hand at Qing Luan with a smile. Qing Luan was a mortal immortal after all. Although she was far inferior to Emperor Wu Shi and the immortal emperor, she was still very valuable. Whether it was skinning and breaking her bones to use as materials, refining Qing Luan's cultivation to make her his subordinates, or even using her as a source of energy to maintain the operation of the system, she was very useful. Liu was worried that Qing Luan would be torn apart by Emperor Wu Shi. A pile of broken body would be much less useful. After all, Qing Luan was Emperor Wu Shi's opponent. If Liu stole her kill, it would look bad. Now that Qing Luan had delivered herself to him, Liu would not be polite. Seal of the Sovereign. The palm print that killed the undying Sky Emperor once again displayed its supreme divine might. There was no sound, no earth-shattering movement, but it contained a monstrous power that could destroy the greater worlds and the universe. Inspired by the remnant of the heaven-flipping seal that came from the immortal ancient era, Liu gathered everything he had learned and evolved a pure destructive divine ability. Unlike the Fist of the Juggernaut, which revealed one's great Tao, the Juggernaut seal was purely destructive. Pure destructive power, extreme destructive power. How terrifying was its power? The palm print shot out, almost recreating the peerless power of the sky-flipping seal to turn the world upside down. Pooh! The palm lightly slammed down. The unstoppable, peerless divine might crushed everything in its path and slammed onto the head of the blue Luan. Brother? Huang. Qing Luan let out a long and miserable cry and fell to the ground. It actually makes me feel like I'm trying to break up an affectionate couple. Liu couldn't help but laugh. With a wave of his sleeve, he put away the body of the green phoenix and the feather-like green longsword. That feather-like longsword was also an immortal artifact. Of course, Liu wouldn't let go of such a harvest. Ah, Lord Qing Luan is also dead. Run. The immortal emperor and the immortal emperor Qing Luan had fallen one after another. The subordinates they had gathered were immediately scared out of their wits and fled in all directions. Kill. Eliminate all evil. Eliminate the evil. Eliminate the evil. The 6 great monarchs under Liu's command and the subordinates of No beginning immediately chased after Qin Nan while yelling. There weren't many great emperors under the immortal emperor and the immortal emperor Qing Luan. There were less than 10 of them. Over the years, great emperor No beginning had fought with the immortal emperor. Although he hadn't won a great victory, many of the great emperors under the immortal emperor had been knocked into ashes by the bell of No beginning. There weren't many great emperors left. Clang. In the sky-splitting sword had broken the immortal heaven blade several times. Even if it was reborn with the power of the phoenix's nirvana, it had suffered heavy losses. At this moment, the immortal emperor was already dead. The imprint of the immortal heaven blade had also begun to dissipate. The immortal heaven blade was no match for the sky-splitting sword. Clang. The sky-splitting sword directly suppressed the immortal heaven blade and swept it up, flying to Liu's side. Well done. Liu reached out and grabbed the immortal heaven blade. With a brush of yin and yang qi, the last imprint of the immortal emperor was instantly destroyed. The immortal heaven blade fell into Liu's hands again. Although it's a weaker immortal artifact, it's still an immortal artifact. Liu put away the immortal heaven blade without hesitation. He had obtained 2 immortal-level divine birds and 2 immortal artifacts from this battle. It was a huge gain. Thank you for your help, Heavenly Master. At this moment, Great Emperor No Beginning came forward and bowed to Liu, thanking him. You're welcome. Liu smiled and bowed to Emperor Wu Shi. Heavenly Mastery. Great Emperor No Beginning's gaze paused on Liu. He arched an eyebrow in surprise. He sensed the presence of the Khanate, Tao embryo on Liu, and even the presence of the primordial scripture. Legend had it that the Grand Celestial Venerate was a senior expert of the ancient chaos era. Why did it seem like he'd practiced the primordial scripture before? You mean the primordial scripture? Liu immediately understood the reason when he saw Great Emperor no beginnings expression. I've studied your primordial scripture before. Liu nodded with a smile. Who is the peak at the end of the path to immortality? The primordial Tao becomes nothing at first sight. The primordial scripture's concept of all things return to nothing, the beginning of heaven and earth, has inspired me greatly. Liu had started off with the primordial scripture. Although he later walked his own path and formed the two origins of matter and order, he still had some of the primordial scripture's aura. Others might not be able to see it, but as the creator of the primordial scripture, he could naturally feel the aura of the primordial scripture. You flatter me, Heavenly Master. Great Emperor No Beginning was enlightened. He had left the primordial scripture on Mount Purple. Others might not be able to take it or see the scripture, but it definitely wouldn't be difficult for the Grand Celestial Venerate. Since the ancient chaos era, the heavenly Tao has been incomplete, and it's impossible to become an immortal. It's amazing that you can become immortals in this world under such circumstances. Liu admired Dizun, No Beginning, Vicious, and even the immortal Emperor, as well as the underworld Emperor Duanda and the Saint Body Yifan. It was simply too difficult to become an immortal under such conditions. Those who could reach this step were all people with great perseverance, wisdom, and courage. It was truly admirable. I've read many scriptures created by the great emperors. Your primordial scripture could be considered a peerless technique if it weren't for the high requirements. Unfortunately, it's rare for one to appear in hundreds of thousands of years. Liu smiled and looked at No Beginning. He was full of praise for the primordial scripture. Among the scriptures created by the great emperors, ruthless heaven devouring demonic art and indestructible heaven art were the strongest. Ruthless cultivation method started from a mortal body and defied the heavens to change his fate. It could be said to be the best in this world. If the primordial scripture's requirements weren't too high, only those with innate saint bodies could cultivate it. Its attainment wouldn't be inferior to ruthless two divine arts. Of course, there was nothing he could do about it. After all, the cultivation methods created by the great emperors were originally created for themselves. No Beginning's talent was too high. There was nothing he could do about it. You flatter me, Heavenly Master. No Beginning laughed loudly and stood on the primordial bell with his hands behind his back. His heroic spirit was admirable. Boom! At this time, the entire space between the two worlds shook. Golden light swept across the sky, enveloping and sealing the entire world. The sovereign, the biggest mastermind in this world, had finally made his move. Chapter 540. A mighty golden light shrouded the world. An inexplicable aura permeated the air, devouring everything and annihilating all life. It was as if it wanted to refine everything. What's going on? The subordinates of the immortal emperor, who were fleeing in all directions, suddenly realized with horror that their strength and life source seemed to be constantly devoured by something. Damn it! Liu's subordinates and No Beginning subordinates also felt the inexplicable aura that was constantly extracting their strength. Sovereign, you finally can't hold it in anymore. Liu looked up at the sky and snorted coldly. My subordinates are not for you to touch. He reached out and waved his hand. The black and white yin and yang qi swept out and turned into a Tai Chi diagram, protecting the great sage physique and No Beginning subordinates under the Tai Chi diagram. Sovereign, you're not dead. The No Beginning heavenly emperor glanced at the sky. His eyes were as calm as water, and his face did not change at all. It was as if he was not surprised by the sovereign's appearance. Sovereign, you've waited for so long. You're finally willing to come out? Liu stood with his hands behind his back and looked at the sky with a smile. There was a hint of mockery in his smile. Grand Heavenly Lord, I didn't expect even you to come. What a pleasant surprise. A face that covered the entire sky appeared in the golden light. His mighty voice shook the world. It was majestic and unparalleled. I look down on all eternity and refine the world. I use a broken world to evolve a world and refine it into a cauldron. Once the supreme immortal cauldron appears, I will definitely improve. As the sovereign's voice echoed, The entire world shook and trembled. Countless streams of light rose up. Everything in the world, including all living beings, was refined into the immortal cauldron. To make the supreme immortal cauldron, for mortal immortals are still not enough. I originally wanted to continue waiting. However, Grand Heavenly Lord, you've given me a huge surprise. You're very strong. As long as I refine you into the immortal cauldron, it'll be enough. The sovereign's voice carried a hint of complacency, which made Liu very unhappy. Bell of no beginning, suppress heaven and earth. Boundless great emperor shouted, and the bell started to ring. The bell of no beginning shone brightly and turned into a gigantic golden bell that protected the entire area. It's just a last-ditch struggle. It's meaningless. Seeing that Emperor Wuxia had used the bell of no beginning to suppress this world, Venerable D did not take it seriously. He smiled and shook his head. This world is the cauldron, and the human world is the furnace. The entire mortal world is the fuel for my immortal cauldron. Once the cauldron is ignited, the universe will be extinguished. Everything will be refined in this cauldron. The ancestor's voice was incomparably cold. He even looked at Liu with ridicule in his eyes. It's too early for you to be happy. Liu smiled and shook his head. Even if the human world is firewood, you won't be able to light the fire. Liu gently flicked his finger, and the talismans that he had already placed in the mortal realm lit up one by one. The mighty light was like a pillar that supported the heavens, forming a light screen that covered the entire universe. A huge formation appeared and protected the entire human realm in its center. This method of arranging stars as a formation came from the great realm sealing formation in another world. Liu modified the realm sealing array, setting it up into a starry sky array that enveloped the entire world, isolating all means. Venerable D's expression changed. The aloof attitude of everything in the world is in my hands on the face in the sky disappeared and was replaced by shock. Grand Celestial Venerable, how dare you destroy my formation? Venerable D's eyes flashed coldly and his face twisted. Even so, I've already controlled this world after hundreds of millions of years of arrangement. You're all in my cauldron. You'll all die. Venerable D roared. The golden light that filled the sky turned into raging flames. The entire void of two worlds seemed to have fallen into a scorching furnace. Even with the suppression of the bell of no beginning, the earth and plants were constantly drying up. How dare you act so violently in front of me? Liu snorted. With a flick of his sleeve, a 9-story pagoda appeared, suppressing the heavens and the earth. Together with the bell of no beginning, the pagoda enveloped the world and blocked the sovereign's refining power. Emperor of no beginning, how about we meet Venerable D? Liu pulled out the sky splitter and turned to look at Emperor of no beginning. I'd like to see Venerable D's skills. Emperor of no beginning's eyes were as calm as water, but Liu could see the hidden turbulence beneath the calm surface. Then let's fight. Liu raised the sky splitter and swung it. Sky splitter. An extremely sharp sword light shot up into the sky. It split the world, severed time and space, annihilated order, and destroyed Tao laws. Everything was destroyed. Everything turned into chaos. The sky splitter had cut open the net that covered the world in the past. Now that Lord of no beginning had turned into a sword spirit, the power of the sky splitter was even stronger. More importantly, Liu's current strength was unstoppable when he activated the sky splitter with all his might. Boom! The world cracked, and the sky collapsed. It was as if the heavens and the earth had been split apart. This sword light that penetrated the heavens and the earth had slashed apart the heavens and the earth, shattering all obstacles. This sword slashed out a huge crack that tore the entire sky apart. The crack in the sky appeared again. The sky splitter lived up to its name. The world that Venerable D had refined into an immortal cauldron was cut open by Liu's sword. It broke open the world of the immortal cauldron and led to the endless void. Damn it! Venerable D's furious and horrified roar came from the crack. Venerable D, die! Emperor of No Beginning roared angrily. His figure whizzed through the crack in the sky and rushed into the endless void. Boom! The void shook violently. The huge impact caused the world of the immortal cauldron to tremble violently. Emperor of No Beginning, did you not have enough fun? Seeing Emperor of No Beginning rushing forward, Liu suddenly remembered that he had killed the immortal Emperor and the immortal Green Phoenix. No Beginning had not even gotten a single one. He must have been itching for a fight. Speaking of which, given my status, isn't it too much to join hands with No Beginning to attack Venerable D? Liu smiled and shook his head. He rushed into the endless void through the crack. Boom! In the chaotic void, Emperor of No Beginning waved his hand and sent out a mighty immortal light. It broke the chaos and annihilated the void, sweeping across the endless void. Opposite No Beginning, there was a figure wearing an emperor's robe and a flat imperial crown. He looked majestic, as if he was the supreme ruler of heaven and earth. He was fighting with No Beginning. Is that the Venerable D, the founder of the ancient heavenly court? Does he really think he is the celestial emperor? Liu shook his head. He didn't like this guy who was even more pretentious than he was. Let them fight for now. I'll deal with any future problems first. He pressed down with his hand. Intertwining black and white light swept out, enveloping the world of the immortal cauldron in the mighty qi of yin and yang. The qi of yin and yang washed over the world like a tidal wave. All of the Venerable D seals were destroyed by it. The world of the immortal cauldron was no longer under the Venerable D's control. The formation that refined all things also stopped working. The desolate tower and bell of No Beginning are free now. Liu waved his hand and took out the desolate tower and bell of No Beginning from the immortal cauldron world. Now, should we get a stool and watch the show? Liu tossed the bell of No Beginning to Emperor of No Beginning. He crossed his arms and watched the two fight with great interest. Recommended a friend's new book, Prince of Xianmen. Chapter 541. I think it's better if I don't interfere. It was strange that he had robbed the limitless emperor twice, so it would be a bit embarrassing to rob him again. Moreover, with his status as the Grand Empyrean, it would be beneath his status to join forces with others to attack. Of course, the most important thing was that Liu wanted to see just how powerful Wuxia the Great Emperor was. He wanted to know just how powerful he was. Thus, Liu began to watch the show with a clear conscience. Previous chapter, next chapter, boom. At this time, a loud sound rang out from the immortal cauldron world. Liu turned his head and saw a figure in white robes whistling through the air, instantly rushing out from the crack. Ruthless is here too? Liu was also surprised to see the Empress rush out from the crack. The ruthless person who had always been concerned about Yi Fan and didn't care about anything else was actually interested in this matter. Emperor. The fluttering white-robed Empress instantly appeared in the void of primal chaos. The Empress raised her eyes to look at the two sides of the battle. Her beautiful eyebrows slightly furrowed, and then, boom! Without saying a word, the Empress instantly rushed into the battlefield. Her jade-white palm pierced through the air, and a mighty immortal light soared into the sky, fiercely slapping towards the sovereign emperor. Sigh. Are you trying to steal the kill? Liu opened his mouth, not knowing what to say. Ruthless, who cherished his words like gold and didn't say a single word for a long time, was simply impossible to communicate with. Although forming a team to kill a boss was a conventional way of doing things. However, the sovereign emperor could only be considered an elite monster at most. There was no need to form a team to kill it, right? Ruthless emperor? No Beginning was also somewhat surprised by the arrival of the Ruthless. However, when he met a ruthless person who didn't care about anyone, didn't answer, and directly started fighting, he was also very helpless. Since he had joined the battle, he could only continue fighting. Previous chapter, next chapter, boom. Previous chapter, next chapter, boom. Immortal light exploded in the sky, and the boundless power shattered the primal chaos. The three of them fought until the primal chaos was destroyed, until the primal chaos collapsed. In this primal chaos, the three of them actually created a void. The process of the battle was very exciting, but there was no suspense. Under the combined forces of ruthless and no beginning, even the sovereign emperor, who claimed to be above the celestial emperor and the sky sovereign, could only be defeated. Pooh! Vicious slammed his palm onto the venerable sovereign's head, shattering his soul. Boom! No beginning punched the venerable sovereign in the chest, destroying his internal organs. The world's biggest mastermind was wiped out by a team just like that. He's an autarch after all. It's a little inappropriate for his corpse to be exposed in the primal chaos void. I will let him rest in peace. Liu stepped forward and collected the ancestor's corpse with a wave of his hand. The body of a worldly immortal was extremely valuable. As for whether or not he was truly buried, it was hard to say. The venerable sovereign has fallen. From now on, the world is safe. After killing the sovereign, Vicious turned around and left without saying a word. Liu and No beginning looked at each other, smiled bitterly, and left the chaos void. After returning to the immortal cauldron world, Liu discovered that Vicious hadn't left. Instead, he was standing in the immortal cauldron world, waiting for Liu and Qin Wentian. This is an immortal treasure painting. An ancient scroll appeared in Vicious' hand. This records the method to break through the void and enter the immortal domain. I don't need this. Liu smiled and waved his hand, then looked at No Beginning and Vicious. The immortal domain is damaged, making it difficult to become an immortal. I plan to repair the immortal domain and give future generations a smooth path to immortal ascension. Repair the immortal domain. Even with No Beginning's calmness and Vicious indifference, they were shocked by Liu's words. The Grand Empyrean had such a remarkable ability. He could repair the immortal domain. Wasn't this too inconceivable? Predecessors plant trees for future generations to enjoy the shade. This is all thanks to Celestial Emperor Huang's efforts. Celestial Emperor Huang's lifelong wish was to repair the immortal domain. Now that he has done so, I naturally have to fulfill his wish. Thinking of Celestial Emperor Huang's efforts, Liu felt a wave of emotion. Is this why the Empyrean appeared in this world? No Beginning and Vicious had both heard of the Grand Empyrean and knew that he was of the same generation as Celestial Emperor Huang. Now that they heard Liu's words, the two of them began to make guesses as to why Liu had appeared in this world. If you need our help, No Beginning will not refuse. No Beginning felt some admiration for the Heavenly Empyrean's magnificent feat in order to repair the immortal domain. Celestial Emperor Huang and the Grand Empyrean had plotted for hundreds of millions of years and put in countless efforts. As expected of a senior expert of virtue and prestige. Although Vicious didn't say anything, he nodded at Liu, indicating that he was willing to help. All right, this was a misunderstanding. In No Beginning and Vicious eyes, Liu is a senior expert of the ancient Chaos era. In fact, Liu hadn't even been to the ancient Chaos era yet. To repair the immortal domain, there's one more crucial thing. Liu reached out and grabbed the aura of 9 dragons pulling a coffin from Sky Burial Island in the resource vault. He touched it with his spirit and found the coffin through this aura. Sky Burial Island is closely connected to the coffin. Through the aura of the 9 dragons pulling the coffin left on Sky Burial Island, you can find it. Using the aura to guide the coffin, summon it. He poured his magic power into the aura in his hand. The attraction from the origin summoned the coffin from the void of the universe. Rumble. 9 pitch-black dragons pulled a huge bronze coffin through the void and flew from a human world. They flew into the world of the immortal cauldron through the void created by Liu and stopped in front of Liu. Celestial Emperor Huang created a small, immortal world to repair the immortal domain. Liu opened the bronze coffin with a wave of his hand. He sighed with emotion when he saw the small bronze coffin inside. Celestial Emperor Huang had ruled over the ages, isolated the source of darkness, and fought alone in the dark realm for countless years. Now, it was unknown if he was still alive. You want to repair the immortal domain and make it perfect. The small immortal world in the bronze coffin has been evolving for countless years. It's enough to repair the immortal domain. Liu reached out and took out the bronze coffin containing the small immortal world. I'll fulfill this wish for you. This is the result of Celestial Emperor Huang's efforts over hundreds of millions of years. Liu picked up the bronze coffin and sighed deeply. After hundreds of millions of years, Celestial Emperor Huang's efforts weren't in vain. I opened it and took a look. There's a world inside, a world just like the immortal domain. Vicious looked at the bronze coffin in Liu's hand and said faintly, Celestial Emperor Huang created the small immortal world to repair the immortal domain. Liu reached out and drew out the laws of the small immortal world from the bronze coffin. A gorgeous immortal light lingered on his fingertip. With this immortal light, Liu stretched out his hand towards the void. Rumble. Light exploded in the sky as heaven and earth rumbled and the void trembled. The light formed by the immortal domain's laws seemed to have triggered a boundless world. That world resonated with the light formed by the immortal domain's laws. Rumble. The space shook violently as an incomparably huge gate appeared in the sky. Boundless immortal light erupted as the gate slowly opened, revealing a vast and boundless world. The immortal domain opened just like that? Didn't you say 3 mortal immortals had to work together to open it? Wushi and Vicious were shocked to see Liu open the immortal domain so easily. The Grand Empyrean was indeed omnipotent. Chapter 542. The fact that Liu had opened the immortal realm with a wave of his hand shocked everyone. The immortal realm, which required 3 worldly immortals to work together, had been opened by the Grand Empyrean with a wave of his hand. Even Wushi and Vicious were very impressed by Liu's strength. After 10 years of analyzing the laws of heaven and earth, Liu's strength had improved again. However, opening the immortal realm so easily had a lot to do with Liu's Tao of laws. With the laws of the small immortal realm in the bronze coffin as a guide, Liu could connect with the laws of the immortal realm. It was indeed much easier than using brute force to open the immortal realm. The immortal realm is open. Let's go and see what the immortal realm is like. Liu carried the bronze coffin and nodded to everyone around him. He stepped into the immortal gate and entered the immortal realm. I didn't think that we would have the chance to become an immortal. The ancient Qilin Emperor and the others lamented as they followed Liu through the immortal gate and into the mysterious immortal realm. Let's go in too. Wushi and Vicious were already worldly immortals, so it didn't matter whether they entered the immortal realm or not. However, they couldn't miss the grand occasion of the Grand Empyrean repairing the immortal realm. Everyone followed closely behind and stepped through the celestial gate, stepping into the celestial realm. Is this the immortal realm? The ancient Qilin Emperor took a deep breath. His body glowed with immortal light and emitted a gorgeous immortal light that resembled feathers. At the same time, the other great emperors and Wushi subordinates also shone with boundless immortal light as if they were ascending. After countless years of searching, today, we have finally become immortals. Everyone was filled with emotions. Some people even had tears in their eyes. The immortal realm is indeed extraordinary. No beginning and Vicious did not show any signs of immortal light, nor did they show any signs of immortal light. They had already become worldly immortals, so they naturally didn't need to use the immortal realm's laws to advance. The two of them followed beside Liu and looked at the vast and mysterious world in front of them. They were also filled with emotions. In front of them was a vast and boundless world. The sky was filled with auspicious clouds and dazzling immortal light. Pure and vast heaven and earth yuan qi permeated the entire world. Compared to the mortal world, the heaven and earth yuan qi in the immortal realm was countless times denser. The earth was vast and boundless. Towering mountains towered into the clouds, as if they were as tall as the heavens. Celestial clouds lingered around them, and multicolored light shone for 10,000 zhang. On the vast earth, the earth veins were like dragons. The winding mountain ranges were like giant dragons swimming. Above the mountain range, the faint silhouettes of true dragons could be seen. The river surged and water vapor filled the sky. Every river seemed to be as vast as the ocean. The ground was verdant and ancient trees towered into the sky. It was like an ancient tree that had grown for millions of years, like a pillar that supported the heavens. The intertwining vines were incomparably thick, resembling spiraling dragons. Bang! The gigantic immortal bird swept across the sky, stirring up the wind and clouds. Roar! The huge savage beast raised its head to the sky and roared, its voice echoing in all directions. The longevity substance is abundant. No wonder it's called the immortal domain. It's not hard to live forever in this world. Without beginning looked around and sensed the longevity substance that permeated this world. He smiled and nodded. The better the conditions, the lower the achievements. Vicious didn't seem to have much interest in the immortal domain. After taking a look, he no longer paid attention to it. The immortal domain is damaged. It looks beautiful now, but in reality, it's already difficult to continue. Liu's eyes swept over. His divine soul came into contact with the world's laws of heaven and earth, and he immediately understood the flaws of the immortal domain. Before the immortal ancient era, this world had always been fighting endlessly. In the end, the world was shattered and countless epochs were destroyed. By the chaotic ancient era, the immortal domain had already been shattered. When his divine soul came into contact with the world's laws of heaven and earth, Liu already understood the truth of the immortal domain being damaged. The celestial realm had been destroyed. After experiencing countless world-destroying battles, the immortal domain was like a cup full of cracks. It looked intact, but in fact, it had long leaked. It was precisely because the immortal domain was leaking that the world's origin energy was constantly flowing away, causing the world to be unable to accommodate more immortals. This was the fundamental reason why the world did not allow one to become an immortal. Repairing the immortal domain is actually an act of mending the heavens. Liu looked at the bronze coffin beside him and felt a wave of emotion in his heart. Heaven Emperor Huang is indeed worthy of being a peerless figure who shakes the ancient times. The act of mending the heavens is truly beyond imagination. He reached out to open the bronze coffin, and endless immortal light rushed out like a fountain. The immortal light was like rain, colorful and varied. "Everyone, I'm going to begin." Liu greeted everyone, and then he lifted the bronze coffin that was spewing immortal light and rushed into the sky with a howl. The heavenly venerable is going to repair the immortal domain. Everyone hurriedly looked at the sky without blinking. They naturally could not miss such a shocking feat. If they could comprehend a thing or two from it, they would benefit for the rest of their lives. Mending the heavens is not easy after all. No Beginning also looked up at the sky. At his level, the feeling was different. Even with the small immortal world created by Heaven Emperor Huang, mending the heavens was not so easy. This was not as simple as plugging the cracks. If the immortal domain was damaged, it was not just the space that was damaged. To a greater extent, it was the laws of the immortal domain that were damaged. The immortal domain is damaged, and the great Tao is incomplete. Today, I will use the treasure left behind by Heaven Emperor Huang to mend the heavens. Liu stood in the sky, reached out, and grabbed a ball of dazzling light from the bronze coffin. Endless immortal light erupted violently, as if a brilliant sun had risen in the sky. Boom! An earth-shattering explosion sounded in the sky, and heaven and earth shook. The entire immortal domain trembled. The immortal domain is damaged? Mending the heavens? Someone wants to mend the heavens? Countless living beings in the immortal domain looked at the sky in shock. When they saw the dazzling figure, they were so excited that their bodies trembled. Grand Empyrean? Grand Empyrean wants to mend the heavens? Rong Qingzi, Old Dan, Tathagata, the Lotus Emperor, the Flame Emperor, and the Yellow Emperor These great emperors who had entered the immortal domain from the flying immortal planet were shocked and excited when they saw the familiar figure in the sky. Great Empyrean virtue! Rong Qingzi and the others shouted and bowed to the imposing figure in the sky. Great Empyrean virtue! Seeing Rong Qingzi and the others bow, the natives of the immortal domain also bowed. A moment later, countless voices of praise rang out in the entire celestial realm. Countless living beings shouted loudly, bowing down towards Liu. Heaven's heart manifests, and the great Tao is complete. Liu grabbed the ball of light that had manifested from the immortal domain and slapped it into the void. Rays of light spread out from the ball of light, like divine chains of order. They connected the great Tao, intertwined with the origin, and connected with the laws of the entire immortal domain. However, they didn't merge with each other. The lesser immortal realm was created by Heavenly Emperor Huang. This was Heavenly Emperor Huang's immortal realm, so it was naturally different from the real immortal realm. It was like an organ transplant. No matter how compatible it was, there would always be some rejection. When the laws of order of the immortal domain merged with the laws of the immortal domain, the first thing that would happen was not integration, but fierce resistance. This was what No Beginning meant when he said, "Mending the heavens is not an easy task." I've been a ruler once, so I have some experience in this kind of thing. Liu smiled nonchalantly. An endless light bloomed from his body. A Tai Chi yin-yang fish with black and white intertwined appeared. Yin and yang evolved. The 5 elements generated and suppressed, and the 8 trigrams derived. A Tai Chi diagram that blotted out the sky covered the entire sky. At the beginning of chaos, Yin and Yang appeared, and heaven and earth were born. Tai Chi Yin and Yang formed the great Tao, and the 5 elements and 8 trigrams proved the heavens. A majestic song rang out, and visions swirled in the sky. At the beginning of heaven and earth, Yin and Yang evolved, and time and space flowed, and all things were born. It was as if the heavens and the earth had been split apart. Vast divine light swept through heaven and earth. Starting from the immortal domain in his hand, it followed the intertwined laws of heaven and earth. The 2 origins of matter and order surged out, running through the entire world. Tao integration. With a slap of his hand, the immortal domain's ball of light instantly collapsed and merged with the entire immortal domain. Clang! The sound of heavenly music reverberated, and the great Tao resonated. Flowers fell from the sky, and golden springs surged from the ground. Divine light filled the sky like a vast ocean, and endless immortal light surged like huge waves. The entire world seemed to have come alive again. The grand celestial venerable is truly omnipotent. Even Emperor No Beginning and Emperor Ruthless couldn't help but marvel at Liu's combat arts. Chapter 543. It's finally done. Liu exhaled and slowly retracted his hand. Even with the minor immortal realm left behind by Celestial Emperor Huang, Liu's act of mending the heavens had taken a lot out of him. He'd given it his all. I've spent so much effort, but I've gained a lot. Liu had a smile on his face as he looked down. With a single glance, everything in the immortal realms was clear in his heart. These were the laws of heaven and earth. Liu had spent so much effort mending the heavens, partly to fulfill Celestial Emperor Huang's wish, but mostly for the sake of the immortal realm's laws of heaven and earth. In the process of mending the heavens, Liu had completely sorted out the laws of heaven and earth of the immortal realm. They were now completely under Liu's control. Celestial Emperor Huang is unfathomably powerful. Liu's success in mending the heavens and completely sorting out the immortal realm's laws was mainly due to Celestial Emperor Huang's minor immortal realm. Without the minor immortal realm, Liu wouldn't have been able to mend and master the immortal realm's laws, even if he'd formed the origins of matter and order. I owe you a lot. When I return to the ancient chaos era, I'll have to make it up to you and settle this karma. Liu smiled and turned to look in the direction of the mortal realm. Now that the immortal realm has been repaired, the path to immortality won't be so difficult anymore. Therefore, I'll have to set a rule for ascension. At this moment, the immortal realm's laws are in my hands. My heart is the heart of the heavens, and my will is the will of the heavens. Therefore, Liu reached out and pressed down. Heaven and earth resonated with the great Tao. The immortal realm is mended. The great Tao is undamaged. The path to immortality is reopened. These are the laws of heaven and earth. The mortal realm. Endless immortal light suddenly erupted from the flying immortal planet. A boundless gate enshrouded in immortal light materialized in the endless void. The boundless gate of heaven covered the sky and covered the earth. One could see this vast gate of heaven hanging high in the void from any corner of the universe. What's going on? What's going on? Could it be that the path to immortality has opened? Seeing such a phenomenon, all the cultivators in the human world were alarmed. They all stretched their necks and looked at the heavenly gate in the sky. The celestial realm is restored. The great Tao is undamaged, and the path to immortality is reopened. A mighty heavenly voice reverberated throughout the entire universe. Complete the immortal domain? The path to immortality has been reopened. Great! That's great. Countless cultivators were overjoyed. This was especially so for some cultivators who were nearing the end of their lifespans. They immediately cried tears of joy. In the name of Taishang, I determine the laws of ascension. When a cultivator reaches the third level of immortal foundation, the Tao-severing realm, they can knock open the heavenly gate and ascend to the immortal realms. As soon as these words were spoken, heaven and earth shook. Grand Celestial Venerable's merits are boundless. In the human realm, countless cultivators kowtowed respectfully toward the gate of heaven that appeared in the sky. Immortal ascension. Become an immortal. In the entire human realm, countless cultivators above the cutting path king level rushed into the sky, knocked on the gate of heaven, and entered the mystic realm. The mystic realm is so big. It's a good thing to increase the population. Liu smiled and left the state of being one with the world. He flew down and landed beside everyone. Taishang Venerable's magnificent feat of mending the heavens is truly admirable. Taishang Venerable had always thought that Liu came from the ancient chaos era and appeared in this era to mend the heavens. He was full of admiration for Liu's hundreds of millions of years of hard work. It's just a wish that was fulfilled. Liu smiled and nodded. Everything is done. I'll take my leave now. After bidding farewell to Taishang Venerable and Vicious, Liu led a few subordinates and flew into the sky, disappearing into the horizon. A moment later, Liu led a group of subordinates to a towering mountain that stretched into the clouds. Let's set up the shopping center here. Mending the immortal realms would have great prospects in the future. Setting up the shopping center here was very valuable no matter how one looked at it. Sky Burial Island out. With a wave of his hand, he released the Sky Burial Island from the resource vault. The huge floating island floated in the void, faintly discernible between the swirling clouds. The coffin pulled by 9 dragons landed on Sky Burial Island, perfectly fitting with the terrain of Sky Burial Island. System, using Sky Burial Island and the coffin pulled by 9 dragons as materials, build the shopping center. At his command, a colorful brilliance enveloped the entire Sky Burial Island. The entire island and the coffin pulled by 9 dragons melted together, constantly changing shape and reshaping. A moment later, a huge heavenly palace in the clouds appeared in the void. Celestial clouds filled the air and thousands of auspicious clouds. 9 huge black dragons circled around the heavenly palace in the clouds, meandering and swimming. Not bad. 9 black dragons turned into guardian spirits. This shopping center is already very extraordinary. Liu nodded in satisfaction. Then he cast a permanent rune on the foothold in the mall. The few of you will settle down in this heavenly palace from now on and guard it for me. They had all been taken in by Liu as subordinates. They were suitable to guard the shopping center in this realm. Yes, sir. The saintly being and the others quickly accepted the order. It's finally over. Liu brought them to the heavenly palace in the clouds. He sat down in the main hall and began to consider the problem of returning to the ancient chaos era. With my current realm, I can go back in time and return to the ancient chaos era. But it's not safe. In the ancient chaos era, there were many tyrannical existences like celestial kings, quasi-celestial emperors, and celestial emperors. These existences could go back in time. If Liu returned to the ancient chaos era by going back in time, he would leave traces in time, and it was very likely that someone would find out. This was very troublesome, and it was not conducive to Liu's follow-up actions. To be safe, I'd better use the system's teleportation function to return to the ancient chaos era. After making up his mind, Liu immediately got up and went to the interplanar teleportation device in the shopping center. He activated the system's function to conceal the secrets of heaven and hide the cause and effect. Do I still need a positioning object to return to the ancient chaos era? Liu was about to activate the interplanar teleportation device when he suddenly heard the system's prompt that he still needed a positioning object to determine the space-time coordinates. Heaven Emperor Huang left behind an item. The coffin of 9 dragons has become part of the shopping center and can no longer be located. However, the desolate tower is still Heaven Emperor Huang's item. After extracting the Heaven Emperor Huang's imprint in the desolate tower as a positioning object, Liu activated the interplanar teleportation device. Heaven Emperor Huang, I'm coming for you. The chi of heaven and earth and the chi of yin and yang poured into the interplanar teleportation device. Liu activated the device. Buzz, the interplanar teleportation device trembled, and a clear glaze of light burst out. Space-time changed, and heaven and earth reversed. Following the aura of Heaven Emperor Huang's imprint, Liu determined a space-time node, broke through the space-time torrent, and entered the ancient chaos era, where heroes were everywhere. Roar! A huge beast's roar shook heaven and earth. In front of him was a desolate mountain range. Between the towering mountains, wild beasts ran amok. Huge roars rose and fell one after another. The huge roars shook heaven and earth, stirring up the wind and clouds. It really is the ancient chaos era. Liu stood in the void and swept a glance at the mountain range below. He discovered that there were countless wild beasts roaming about in the mountains, and a bloody and violent aura soared into the sky. In this era, the survival of the human race is very difficult. Liu sighed and turned his head to look beyond the mountains at a simple and primitive small mountain village. Is that Stone Village? In that small village, Liu saw a half-dead withered tree. The tree's crown was gone, and only a section of the tree trunk was left. The trunk was very large, and it was completely charred-black. Its diameter was more than 30 feet. On this section of the trunk, there was only a weak branch, but this branch was very mysterious. The branches and leaves were sparkling and translucent like jade, and they were dark green all over. They emitted a faint halo that enveloped the entire small mountain village, as if they were protecting it. Chapter 544. Little brats, come out and train. The morning sun rose from the peak of the mountain, shining a brilliant golden light over the small mountain village. A tall and muscular man was standing on a huge rock in the village, holding a thick bone club. He was shouting at the top of his lungs, "Coming, coming." A group of children answered loudly and hurriedly ran out of their houses to gather in the open space of the village. There were dozens of children, ranging from a few years old to over 10 years old. Each and every one of them was tall and strong, like calves. When the sun rises, the vitality is the strongest. Training your body at this time is very beneficial to your growth. The desolate mountain range is full of danger. Only by training a strong body can you survive in this desolate mountain range. The middle-aged man holding the bone club pointed at the group of children below and warned them with a serious face. Do you all understand? Understood. The children answered in unison, and then they all got into their stances to train their bodies. I also understand. At this time, a 1 or 2 year old little guy, who looked like he was carved from jade and had tender arms and legs, followed behind the group of children. He raised his little hands and answered in a childish voice. The little guy's skin was white and tender, and his body was full of baby fat. In particular, there were still milk stains at the corner of his mouth that had not been wiped dry. He clumsily copied the movements of the other children, waving his fists and feet. He looked very cute. All right, Heaven Emperor Huang is still drinking milk? Li Yu's figure turned into nothingness and hid to the side. Seeing the little guy with milk stains, he rubbed his forehead and was speechless. Speaking of which, the Heaven Emperor Huang, who ruled over the ancient times, really doesn't have the might of the invincible Heaven Emperor. Seeing him like this, I can't help but want to pinch him. Li Yu smiled and looked at the little guy, and his heart gave birth to another sigh. He was born supreme, but his supreme bone was dug out when he was still an infant, and he almost lost his life. He was reborn from nirvana and rose in adversity. After experiencing countless hardships and dying countless times, he finally became an immortal emperor, the supreme ruler of the world. Heaven Emperor Huang's life could be said to be tortured to death. She was almost killed when she was still a baby. After that, he went back and forth several times. In the end, his son died, his brother died, and even Willow Deity died. He was all alone, fighting on his own. Heavenly Emperor Huang could be said to have lived a miserable life, even after using the method of reincarnation to resurrect those who had passed away. In the end, Heavenly Emperor Huang still fought alone. He ruled over the ancient times and fought against the source of darkness. Little sure to, what you lack the most in your life is a helper. You have been fighting alone, facing all the difficulties and obstacles by yourself. Although he's a hero, it's too tragic. Li Yu smiled and looked at the little guy. So, I'll give you some helpers, so that you will no longer be alone and will no longer be fighting alone. Li Yu turned his head to look at the blackened, withered tree beside him. When he saw the lone branch, he sighed again. Willow Deity, immortal ancient guardian spirit, an immortal king-level existence. Now that I'm heavily injured and my true spirit is dormant, I don't have much strength left. With a sweep of his divine sense, Li Yu also sensed Willow Deity's condition. At this moment, Willow Deity was at a critical moment of nirvanic rebirth. Its true spirit was still asleep. You are little Shidu's greatest helper in his life. I'll help you recover as soon as possible. Li Yu reached out and took out a ginseng fruit from the ginseng tree in the resource warehouse. With a flick of his finger, the ginseng fruit turned into a stream of light and shot into the blackened, withered tree. The ginseng fruit was also an elixir of immortality. It could allow an immortal emperor to live another life. Although it could not allow the immortal king-level Willow Deity to recover its full strength, it could still restore a portion of its strength. Buzz! The blackened willow tree shook violently and burst into green light that filled the sky. Green branches grew out from the tree trunk one after another. The charred tree trunk fell apart piece by piece, and an endless amount of vitality burst out violently. In an instant, the blackened tree trunk turned into ashes and scattered everywhere. In the green light that filled the sky, a 10-foot-tall willow tree that was as green as jade stood in the small village. It was emitting endless immortal light. The immortal light was like rain, and the sky was filled with multicolored light. The sacred light enveloped the entire mountain village, and endless vitality filled the air. At this moment, the flowers and trees in the entire mountain village suddenly grew crazily. Even the doors and windows sprouted green shoots. Everyone in the mountain village only felt a warm divine spring cleansing their bodies. All the pain in their bodies was swept away. It was as if their entire body had been cleansed by this divine spring, removing impurities and purifying their essence. Even the elders in the village felt as if they had become 20 years younger in an instant. The wrinkles on their faces faded, their sparse teeth became denser, and their pale hair grew black roots. The willow deity has appeared. Everyone in the mountain village ran out in surprise and surrounded the altar in front of the willow tree, respectfully worshiping the willow deity. Buzz. The willow tree stretched out its branches as if responding to the worship of the mountain village people. After the worship was completed, the willow tree slowly withdrew its radiance. The immortal light was no longer visible, and the divine splendor was no longer visible. The sparkling and translucent willow tree also became ordinary. Thank you for your help. In a place where the people in the mountain village couldn't see, in the space that was like the separation of two worlds, the willow deity manifested its spiritual body and appeared in front of Liu. Countless willow catkins fluttered in the wind. A woman with a peerless appearance, as bright as the moon, stood there elegantly. Her fluttering hair was like thousands of silk ribbons hanging down from the willow tree. So the willow deity is a woman? Li was a bit surprised. Then he smiled and nodded at the willow deity. You and I are both existences of the same level. Seeing you in trouble, how can I not help? May I ask your distinguished self's name? The willow deity looked at Liu with a bit of confusion. The willow deity that was born in the immortal era actually found that it didn't recognize the person in front of it. This made the willow deity very surprised. There were only a few immortal king-level existences in the entire world. Suddenly, an unknown immortal king appeared. This was really too shocking. I'm a Grand Supreme. Greetings, Tao friend. Liu smiled and cupped his hands. It wasn't good for him to explain his background in detail, so he could only vaguely pass it by. Tao, your distinguished self actually came from the Tao sect of the early years of the immortal era. This world had the Western sect, but it also had the Tao sect. Only, after the immortal era, the true Tao sect had long disappeared without a trace. In the present world, only a few scattered heretical sects were left. Lu Qing greets the Grand Supreme. In the immortal era, the Tao sect's experts respectfully called him Heavenly Sovereign. The Tao sect's Heavenly Sovereign was a completely different concept from the Heavenly Sovereign that some supreme beings called themselves. The willow deity thought that Liu came from the immortal era, so it naturally greeted Liu with the ancient title. I wonder what the Heavenly Sovereign came into the world this time for. At the immortal king level, very few people would come out into the world. The willow deity was also a bit curious about Liu's arrival. Darkness is about to arrive. Another shocking calamity is coming. Liu sighed. I sensed a trace of heaven's mysteries while meditating. The opportunity to pacify the source of darkness is in the great wilderness. Therefore, I came to look for it. Darkness is about to arrive? Is there going to be another catastrophe? The willow deity's expression became serious. It hurriedly asked Liu, has the Heavenly Sovereign found the opportunity to pacify the darkness? I found it. Liu smiled and nodded. With a wave of his hand, a window opened in this isolated space, and a figure appeared. It was a little guy whose milk was still wet. Chapter 545. That's him. Willow deity raised her eyebrows in surprise when she saw the little guy. Although he's a natural-born sovereign, his sovereign bone has already been taken away. Even if he's reborn, he might not be able to reach the peak. Without destruction, there can be no construction. Nirvana rebirth. Liu smiled at the little guy. I saw a trace of heaven's secrets. He's the key to everything. So, Willow deity, please protect him as he grows. I hit it off with him too. I'm suitable to be his Tao protector. Willow deity looked at the little guy with a childish voice, and a smile appeared on her face. I have a cultivation technique here. Willow deity, you can refer to it. Also, this village is the Sure tribe's ancestral land. These people can also be cultivated. I also have a cultivation technique. Willow deity, please pass it on to them. Liu handed over 2 jade slips. One was the Heavenly Wood technique, and the other was the Human Immortal Martial Way. Heavenly Wood technique? Human Immortal Martial Way? Willow deity took the 2 cultivation techniques. Her soul touched them, and instantly understood the two cultivation techniques. Although Willow Deity's current strength was not as strong as before, her knowledge was not lacking. Even Willow Deity was deeply shocked when she saw the two cultivation techniques that Liu gave her. In ancient times, it was said that there was a heavenly wood technique that connected the 10,000 worlds. This cultivation technique takes the meaning of the heavenly wood technique and achieves the wood origin of the connate 5 elements. It's indeed a Taoist inheritance. It's unfathomable. Willow Deity was full of praise for the heavenly wood technique. Although the combat power of this cultivation technique was not very strong, it had a deep understanding of the wood origin. It understood the principle of withering and flourishing, and its vitality was exuberant. This cultivation technique was simply too useful for Willow Deity's recovery. Human immortal martial way is also very extraordinary. Not only can this cultivation technique cultivate a strong body, but it also has the ability to be reborn from a drop of blood, ever-changing and lawful embodiment of heaven and earth. Once the vacuum is shattered, the body can become a saint. This should be the cultivation technique of the Taoist protectors. Seeing these two techniques, the Willow Deity firmly believed in Liu's identity as the Grand Empyrean. These two martial arts were both orthodox Taoism martial arts. If one wasn't from Taoism, it would naturally be impossible for them to obtain the legacies of orthodox Taoism. Thank you, Sky Sovereign, for your generous gift. The elixir of immortality allowed Willow Deity to recover a portion of her strength, and she also obtained 2 cultivation methods from Liu. Willow Deity was very grateful to Liu. Darkness is coming. I still need to make some preparations. Fellow Taoist Willow Deity also needs to recover as soon as possible. Liu warned Willow Deity. I understand. Willow Deity nodded. Darkness was about to arrive, and a calamity was about to arrive. Without enough strength, death was right in front of them. The Willow Deity naturally wouldn't ignore this. I'll leave this place to fellow Taoist Willow Deity. I'll take my leave now. Liu cupped his fists and bowed. Then, his figure flashed and disappeared without a trace. The calamity is about to arrive. Even someone like the Grand Empyrean has to be on guard. I also need to make preparations early. Willow Deity took in a deep breath. Her figure turned into a streak of light and returned to her main body. In Stone Village, the countless strands of silk hanging down from the willow waved again. Rays of light rippled outwards like ripples. Everyone in Stone Village, quickly come and see me. A voice transmitted into the minds of everyone in Stone Village. Willow Deity summoning. Hearing this summon, everyone in Stone Village hurriedly ran under the willow tree and bowed in front of the altar. Greetings, Willow Deity. I wonder what instructions does Willow Deity have for summoning us? In this world, the relationship between guardian spirits and humans was to live and die together. Their fates were one. No matter if it was a village, a town, an ancient country, or even a sacred ground, they couldn't do without the protection of a guardian spirit. Ever since this willow tree that was struck by lightning many years ago fell in a Stone Village and became their guardian spirit, Willow Deity and Stone Village had already become closely connected. I have received the help of an expert and recovered some of my strength. I also know that this world is about to face a calamity. The willow tree's tens of thousands of branches stretched outwards. Rays of light rippled outwards. Willow Deity's voice transmitted into everyone's minds. The calamity is about to arrive. Without enough strength, you won't be able to survive. Senior Grand Empyrean has bestowed a cultivation method and ordered me to pass it on. The dark green branches scattered out rays of light and entered the foreheads of everyone in Stone Village. This is the cultivation method bestowed by Grand Empyrean. You must cultivate it seriously and increase your strength as soon as possible. Only then will you have the strength to survive in the calamity. Many thanks, Willow Deity. Many thanks, Grand Empyrean. Everyone in Stone Village, regardless of age, received the mortal-immortal martial path inheritance. Although they didn't know the origin of Grand Empyrean, since Willow deity said that he was an expert, then he must be an expert. Rebirth from a drop of blood? Myriad transformations? Sanctification of the flesh? Stone Village's old chief, Shi Yunfeng, also left the great wilderness in the past and learned cultivation methods. At this moment, when he saw this immortal martial path, he was immediately deeply shaken. Only cultivating the body's qi and blood, not cultivating any symbol precious techniques, can actually cultivate such a divine ability? It really is a cultivation method bestowed by an expert senior. Stone Village has hope of rising up. The old chief cried tears of joy and deeply bowed towards the altar. Grandpa Chief, this cultivation method seems to be easier to learn than the symbols you taught me. The little guy spoke with a childish voice. According to the immortal martial past body refining fist technique, he seemed to be fiddling with it. Every move and style seemed extremely ordinary. However, when the little guy brandished his fists and raised his legs, the chi and blood within his body were vast and mighty. Indistinctly, the rumbling sounds of angry tides could be heard. Chi and blood tides? This little guy is indeed extraordinary. The old chief stared at the little guy, his two eyes shining. Good child, good child. Hong, hong, hong. At this time, the great earth began to violently shake, as if there was an earthquake. Everyone in Stone Village was startled. Looking at the scene in the distance, they were so shocked that their bodies began to tremble. They only saw that in the distant wilderness, there was a figure whose entire body was covered in golden hair. Its body was even taller than a mountain, and it carried a huge black club that seemed to support the heavens as it walked step by step towards the depths of the desolate mountains. Every step this figure took caused the earth to tremble and the mountains to sway. What is this thing? Is this the calamity that the Willow deity spoke of? Seeing the enormous figure in the distance that connected the heavens and the earth, everyone was shocked to the point of being dumbstruck. Even though they lived in the desolate mountains for a long time, Stone Village's people had never seen this kind of creature before. An archaic descendant was already in existence that was incomparably strong. Just how strong was this creature right now? How long? Not long after that golden creature left, a huge sound rang out in the sky. An enormous and boundless vicious bird that covered the sky pierced through the air. A pair of blood-colored eyes emitted a monstrous, fiendish aura that was incomparably ruthless. This vicious bird was originally flying directly over Stone Village. When it approached Stone Village, it suddenly saw that green and jade-like willow tree. The vicious bird seemed to be startled and hurriedly flapped its wings, making a detour far away. These vicious beasts and fierce birds entered the mountains. Could it be that a mountain treasure appeared in the depths of the desolate mountains? The old chief frowned, and his heart faintly felt uneasy. These kinds of big guys, once they started fighting, the desolate lands would definitely be turned into ruins. This would be a heaven-shaking calamity. Chapter 546. The sky-devouring sparrow and Zhuyin really came. Deep in the desolate mountain range, Liu appeared at the peak of an inconspicuous mountain. Standing with his hands behind his back, Liu looked into the distance. A giant golden ape shook the earth, and a ferocious bird soared through the sky. In addition to these two, the Fire Nation's guardian spirit, the vermilion bird, and a Qiongqi have already entered the depths of the desolate mountain range. Are you looking for the so-called mountain treasure? Liu smiled and lowered his head to look at the mountain beneath his feet. He stretched out his hand and pressed down. With a brush of the qi of heaven and earth, a square box made of bone that was about a foot in size buried deep under the mountain fell into Liu's hand. This is the so-called mountain treasure. With a wave of his hand, the white box opened with a swish. Inside the box was a stack of scrolls made of animal skin. Liu took out the scrolls and read them one by one. The 6 paths of reincarnation heavenly art. The supreme inheritance of the Supreme Hall. It's indeed extraordinary. Liu scanned it with his divine soul and memorized the 6 paths of reincarnation heavenly art. Even with Liu's current cultivation level, he felt some admiration for this art. The Supreme Hall Senior who created this art is truly a peerless genius. After comprehending the 6 paths of reincarnation heavenly art, Liu formed several hand seals. 6 hand seals were formed, and 6 black holes appeared. Time flowed, and the world changed. Life grew old and died, and plants withered and flourished. The universe died out and returned to chaos. When chaos was first born, yin and yang appeared. When the beginning of Xianhuang, all things came to life. Endless phenomena appeared, and the reincarnation of heaven and earth, and all things changed. As expected of the Supreme Hall's heavenly art, Liu dispersed the hand seals and dispelled the phenomena around him. In the future, Heaven Emperor Huang left the 6 paths of reincarnation fist in the forbidden grounds of the desolate ancient. Compared to the 6 paths of reincarnation heavenly art, the 6 paths of reincarnation fist is only the tip of the iceberg. Putting down the 6 paths of reincarnation scroll, Liu flipped through the rest of the beast's skin scrolls. Among them, he saw the True Roar treasured art, Green Luan treasured art, Baifeng treasured art, Taotai treasured art, Swan and I treasured art, Great Peng treasured art, and other innate treasured arts of the pure-blooded true spirit race. These are all the pure-blooded, true spirit treasured arts the Supreme Hall has collected. Liu flipped through them and memorized all the precious techniques and divine abilities. There are a total of 24 precious techniques and abilities. The legendary 9 sons of the dragon are all among them. There are also some innate treasure techniques of other pure-blooded divine beasts. These things are still very valuable. With a wave of his hand, Liu collected the beast skin scroll into the resource vault. All that was left in his hand was a tattered and ancient scroll. What was recorded on this scroll was an incomplete Swan and I treasure technique, but its contents were not simple. Does the Supreme Palace also play this kind of trick? One of the most powerful sword arts in the world, the grass symbol sword art, is hidden here. The grass symbol sword art originated from a stalk of grass, the 9-leaf sword grass. During the primordial era, there was a stalk of grass that was listed as one of the primordial vicious 10. This stalk of grass had 9 leaves, and the leaves were shaped like swords. When the sword leaves slashed out, space-time would be destroyed, and heaven and earth would be overturned. Its sharpness was unstoppable. The grass symbol sword art was extremely sharp. There was nothing it could not cut through, nothing it could not break. This sword art is also very valuable to me. Liu already had the Sky Splitter sword art and Qi Song Z's Great Void Sword Qi. With this grass symbol sword art, even if he did not become a sword cultivator, Liu's sword arts would still be extremely powerful. Then let me experience this supreme sword art. With a wave of his hand, the beast skin scroll was instantly destroyed, revealing a silver page. Clang! Clang! A silver sword Qi suddenly shot out, cutting through everything in the world with its incomparably sharp sword Qi. Fortunately, I was prepared. A layer of intertwining black and white light enveloped the silver page, preventing the sword Qi from breaking through the seal. Otherwise, if this sword Qi were to rush out, even this desolate mountain range would probably be slashed into pieces. This is not the sword Qi of the 9-leaf sword grass itself, but the sword Qi that was imperceptibly carved into the sword art when someone recorded it down. Liu sensed the strength of the sword Qi. It was roughly equivalent to the strength of a great emperor, which was the sovereign of this world. It's quite a pity that this sword Qi has been destroyed. I'll leave it behind. He reached out with his hand, and as the Taiji yin-yang symbol spun, the sword Qi was sealed. After I find the system's host, this thing can be used as a trump card. After putting away the sealed sword Qi, Liu carefully examined this supreme sword art. A stalk of grass can cut through the sun, moon, and stars. The grass symbol sword art truly is one of the strongest sword arts. Liu's spirit touched it, and he quickly understood the grass symbol sword art. This sword art was all about sharpness and extreme sharpness. The grass symbol sword art was the innate ability of the nine-leaf swordgrass. It didn't require a sword. A single strand of hair or a single finger could unleash an unstoppable sword chi that could cut through anything. With a flick of his finger, a silver thread shot out from the tip of his finger, silently cleaving a huge mountain in half from top to bottom. The extreme sharpness of the sword cut through the huge mountain as easily and silently as if it was cutting through tofu. The grass symbol sword art really is powerful. Liu nodded, and the bee skin scroll containing the cursive symbol sword technique was also stored away. System, scan all the cultivation methods collected in the bee skin scroll and record them into the resource vault. Although he had memorized all the techniques and treasured arts, it was still necessary to record a copy of them in the system's database. After all, in this era, Liu planned to create a system to give the desolate celestial emperor a powerful enough helper. I do have a candidate for the system's host. Liu thought of the little guy who became Littlestone's substitute in the second ancestral ground. He attracted the attention of others in Littlestone's place, fighting for a chance at survival for Littlestone. Meanwhile, he was framed until his legs were crippled, and he was hanging on by a thread. This is the story of a bullied youth who rose up in the face of adversity, triumphantly advancing all the way to the peak of his life. Liu smiled and nodded. He lowered his head to look at the white jade bone box in his hand. This bone box contains the Transcendence chapter of the True Primordial Record. The Transcendence chapter of the True Primordial Record was the method to transcend and become an immortal in this world. Even though Liu had already become an immortal, he was still interested in the Transcendence chapter. It would allow him to gain more insights. Unfortunately, the Transcendence chapter isn't complete. The first half of the True Primordial Record is in Stone Village, and the other half of the Transcendence chapter is also in Stone Village. Stone Village is indeed the place where all kinds of karma converge. Liu smiled. There's no rush for the True Primordial Record. Let's deal with the matter in front of us first. With a wave of his hand, Liu put away the bone box and looked at the desolate land. The origin of order controlled the laws and stood above them. Its gaze penetrated the nine hells. Everything under the desolate land was in Liu's eyes. In the depths of the desolate mountain range, there was a gigantic dragon turtle that was as large as a continent. It carried an ancient and majestic palace on its back, and it was in deep slumber underground. This is the Supreme Hall. This was the most mysterious inheritance sect in this world. There was only one person in every generation, and all of them were invincible sovereigns. This thing is very useful. Not to mention the countless books and secret technique inheritances collected in the Supreme Hall, Liu wouldn't be able to resist the urge to make a move on that humongous dragon turtle. This dragon turtle was simply too big, too powerful, and too flashy. Liu naturally wouldn't let go of such a good thing. The Grand Empyrean is in charge of the Supreme Hall. Isn't this very suitable? Liu looked at the gigantic dragon turtle underground with a smile on his face. Chapter 547. Let's capture this dragon tortoise first. After locating the dragon tortoise's sleeping position, Liu waved his hand and unleashed a yellow light. He activated the Earth Escape technique and burrowed underground. Liu concealed his aura as he flew through the earth veins, concealing all movements as he silently approached the dragon tortoise. I'm not trying to ambush you. With Liu's status, even he felt that it was beneath him to do such a sneaky thing. However, there was nothing he could do about it. The dragon tortoise was too big. If it was alarmed, it could easily turn everything within 100,000 miles into ruins with a wave of its claws or a flip of its body. Destroying everything within 100,000 miles and killing billions of humans and countless creatures was something Liu wouldn't do even if he didn't care about the lives of others. Thank goodness I didn't alarm it. Liu silently arrived beside the dragon tortoise. He was secretly relieved when he sensed the dragon tortoise's power with his soul. How is this a dragon tortoise? It's dragon son Bashya. The dragon tortoise and dragon son Baxia looked very similar, but their natures were worlds apart. Dragon son Baxia had the innate ability to control water, but it was also of the earth attribute. An earthen divine beast, like it could easily flip the earth and destroy the great wilderness if it was enraged. More importantly, Dragon son Baxia already possessed the strength of an autarch. This was already equivalent to the level of a great emperor. It didn't take much effort for him to destroy the land with a single palm. Dragon son Baxia and the Supreme Hall have become one? Liu released his consciousness and discovered that Dragon son Baxia had become one with the ancient palace on its back. The Supreme Hall is truly generous. The palace and Dragon son Baxia had become one. The entire palace had become a part of Baxia's body, turning it into a moving, supreme headquarters. This kind of spending was indeed extraordinary. I've even captured a few dozen great emperors. I've even taken 3 of the worldly immortals into the resource vault. Compared to me, this kind of spending is nothing. Liu smiled and pointed his finger at the giant dragon turtle's head, which was as big as a mountain. Soul Catcher. With a brush of yin and yang energies, Liu pulled Dragon son Baxia's divine soul out. Roar! 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 Inside the black and white seal of the Taiji heavenly prison, Baxia's soul roared, but he couldn't resist at all. Don't shout. This is a good thing. You'll benefit from it later. Liu smiled and waved his hand, collecting Baxia's soul into the resource vault. System. Erase all the sacrificial imprints in Baxia's soul. In the name of the Grand Empyrean, I will be the Supreme Hall's patriarch and reconstruct Dragon son Baxia's memories. With Liu's current cultivation level, it was naturally not difficult for him to modify his memories. It was just that the system's functions were more convenient to use, so Liu was too lazy to do it himself. A moment later, Dragon son Baxia's soul was cleansed and his memories were reconstructed. I'll add a seal of loyalty to be on the safe side. He took out Baxia's soul and placed the seal of loyalty on it with a flick of his finger. All right, soul, return to your body. With a wave of his hand, Baxia's soul entered Baxia's enormous body. Baxia greets the Supreme Patriarch. After the soul entered Baxia's body, the enormous dragon son Baxia nodded his head and bowed at Liu. Baxia's body glowed yellow as he bowed. His enormous head moved underground as if he was moving in water. The earth didn't tremble at all. The power of the earth is indeed something. Liu nodded with a smile. In that case, I'll give you some benefits. Liu waved his hand and sent out 2 balls of light. He taught Baxia the great earth scripture and Baxia's true art of the human immortal martial path. Thank you for the arts, Patriarch. The 2 arts fused into Baxia's soul were both very beneficial to him. The great earth scripture could strengthen his power of the earth, while Baxia's true art could purify Baxia's bloodline and refine his blood. Given Baxia's supreme Baxia cultivation, he would be able to master these 2 techniques in no time. Baxia's true art of the human immortal martial path was the foundation of the human immortal martial path. It could be reborn from a single drop of blood. You should cultivate for now. I'll return to the Supreme Hall to take a look. The enormous palace on Baxia's back was the Supreme Hall. Liu stepped forward and walked to the front of the palace. There are indeed formations and restrictions. I need the 6 paths of reincarnation to open the palace. Liu glanced at the palace gates and raised his hand with a smile. Although I know the 6 paths of reincarnation, I've always been the one to set the rules. I won't follow your rules. He pressed his hand forward, and a black and white light swept out. The energy of yin and yang enveloped the entire palace and erased all the formations and restrictions. This is much more pleasing to the eye. Liu smiled, waved his hand, and opened the gates. He walked into the enormous palace. The palace was an enormous immortal residence. There were mountains, rivers, pavilions, terraces, and palaces. Not bad. Liu scanned the palace with his soul. Although it was very old, it was majestic. It wasn't extravagant, but it was exquisite. It's as good as my eternal immortal abode. Liu thought of the eternal immortal abode. I might as well refine the eternal immortal abode and this palace into one. From now on, Basya would look even more imposing when he carried the palace around. Let's put away the useful things in the Supreme Hall first. The Supreme Hall didn't have many people, so most of the palace was empty. There was only the Scripture Pavilion, the Ancestral Master Hall, and a few other useful things. Everything else could be turned into materials. He walked into the Scripture Pavilion. The enormous Scripture Pavilion was filled with countless books. There were all kinds of talisman treasures, some ancient heavenly arts, and some miscellaneous notes. These things are quite useful. With a wave of his hand, Liu collected all the books in the Scripture Pavilion. The only thing left is the Ancestral Master Hall. After leaving the Scripture Pavilion, Liu went to the Ancestral Master Hall. Apart from a few portraits of the Ancestral Masters, there was only a jade booklet and a golden book. The portraits of the Ancestral Masters, the jade booklet, and the golden book. These were the historical legacies of the Supreme Hall. If Liu wanted to use the identity of the Supreme Hall's Ancestral Master, he couldn't do without these things. After putting away the portraits, the jade booklet, and the golden book, there was nothing else important in the Supreme Hall. Then let's start refining. With a flash, Liu appeared outside the palace, a small bronze hall in his hand. Disperse. With a shake of his hand, the eternal immortal abode collapsed into 480 million talismans. Combine. With a wave of his hand, the eternal immortal manor transformed into motes of light that fell into the Paragon Hall like raindrops. Combine the immortal abode and reconstruct the palace. Black and yellow energy swept out, instantly disintegrating the palace and merging with the eternal immortal abode's talisman dots of light. As the energy flowed, a giant palace slowly emerged from Dragon Prince Basha's carapace. The light receded, and the enormous palace reappeared. The outer appearance of the palace was still the same as the Supreme Palace. After all, the Supreme Palace had existed for a long time. Many people knew what the Supreme Palace looked like, so Liu didn't change it. The exterior hadn't changed, but the interior was different. The eternal immortal abode had been created from the kingdom of eternity, the heavenly tomb, and the immortal steel. Both the kingdom of eternity and the heavenly tomb each had a boundless minor world. Now that the Supreme Hall had merged with the eternal immortal abode, it also had a major minor world. As long as I hang my portrait in the Ancestral Master Hall and write my name on the jade booklet and golden book, I'll be the most authentic Ancestral Master of the Supreme Hall. Liu smiled as he walked into the newly created palace. Chapter 548. Let's go to the Ancestral Hall first and get an identity from the Supreme Hall. If he wanted to survive in this world, he had to have a clear background. An immortal king of unknown origins was too eye-catching. Even if the system blocked out karma, if he attracted the attention of some existences, such as that unlucky immortal emperor who was half dead from a drop of black blood from another world and became a demon, this would be very disadvantageous for Liu's next move. He walked into the Ancestral Hall and waved his hand to hang up the portraits of the Ancestral Masters. How can there not be a portrait of me in the Ancestral Hall? Liu looked at the oldest portrait. It was an ancient bee skin painting depicting a figure wearing a green robe looking down on the world. System, extract the energy from the origin ancient mine in the resource vault and exchange it for a dragon skin. Make a portrait of me according to the style of this ancient scroll. Remember, it must be old and look like it has existed for countless years. A moment later, an ancient scroll with a vast aura appeared in Liu's hands. In the scroll, Liu stood in the chaotic void. Beneath his feet was a vast and boundless world. It was as if he was walking on the sky above the world. Not bad. It shows a bit of my elegance. Liu smiled and waved his hand, hanging the scroll in the middle of the Ancestral Hall. The jade and golden books are simpler. The system directly inscribed Liu's title, Supreme Empyrean, at the beginning of the jade and golden books. He took out the jade and golden books, and a bit of yin and yang qi landed on the title, leaving a mark. All right, now, I am the Supreme Hall's Supreme Patriarch in name only. After placing the jade and golden books on the divine table in the ancestral hall, Liu turned and walked out of the ancestral hall, arriving at the library. System, scan the information in all the books. After recording all the treasured arts and secret techniques, Liu waved his hand and placed them in the library. The Supreme Hall's matters have basically been taken care of. Liu turned around and walked out of the palace. He glanced at Xia and saw that Xia was cultivating the Xia true art and condensing his blood essence. Not bad. Given Xia's autark strength and its enormous size, as well as the vast amount of blood and qi in its body, it'll be very easy for it to achieve a breakthrough. Sure enough, as soon as Liu finished speaking, Xia had already made a breakthrough. Boom! His qi and blood surged like a raging tide, and the acupoints all over his body rumbled. In just a few moments, Xia had achieved success in his cultivation. He had opened all his acupoints and broken through to the blood rebirth realm. Thank you for your teachings, Patriarch. After cultivating it, Xia's power has become even more condensed. Xia's humongous body had shrunk significantly. It was like an extremely fat man who had turned his fat into muscles. He had become even more capable and powerful. It's still a little big. However, as long as I continue cultivating it and reach the shape-shifting and vanquishing realm, I'll be able to completely condense my qi and blood. It won't be so exaggerated anymore. Even though Xia had shrunk, he was still 10,000 kilometers wide. If he couldn't change his size, he wouldn't be able to go anywhere. Standing on Xia's back, Li looked up at the outside world and saw the four powerful venerate beasts still searching the desolate mountains. These guys are still looking for the so-called treasure mountain. A bone box that looked like white jade appeared in Liu's hand. This is what you're fighting over. The so-called treasure mountain is the inheritance of the autark hall. When the bone box had landed in the desolate mountains, it had revealed a wisp of its aura and attracted the attention of several venerate realm beings nearby. The scarlet ape, the sky-devouring sparrow, the Qiongqi, and the vermilion bird. These four pure-blooded venerate realm beings had entered the desolate mountains to search for this so-called treasure mountain. If Liu hadn't put the bone box away in advance, the four pure-blooded beings would have fought over the treasure mountain until the mountains collapsed and the earth cracked. The sky-devouring sparrow and the Qiongqi hadn't been able to obtain the treasure mountain, so they destroyed villages and countries to vent their anger, devouring billions of humans in the desolate mountains. With me here, I naturally won't allow such a thing to happen. Liu withdrew his gaze. There's no rush. Let them search for a while first. It would be difficult for these four pure-blooded exalt realm beings to find the so-called treasure mountain in the desolation wilderness range of 50,000 kilometers. I'll deal with the system first. When the time comes, I'll just toss out a bit of my aura, and I'll be able to fish them out. Liu ignored the four pure-blooded beings and told Xia to keep an eye on them. Then, Liu left the underground world. The second ancestral ground of the Stone Clan is 300,000 kilometers away from here. It's in the western border of the Stone Kingdom. Liu released his divine soul and scanned the surrounding million kilometers. He found the location of the Stone Kingdom and the second ancestral ground of the Stone Clan. The second ancestral ground of the Stone Clan is just a dilapidated village. Liu's figure crossed thousands of mountains and rivers in an instant and arrived at the second ancestral ground of the Stone Clan. This was a dilapidated ancestral ground. Under the dim twilight, the ancestral ground of the Stone Clan was dilapidated and looked very gloomy. This was the second ancestral ground of the Stone Clan and also a place of exile. The Stone Clan was the royal family of the Stone Kingdom. Some of the clansmen with extraordinary status would be exiled from the capital to the second ancestral ground after making a mistake. In this dilapidated ancestral land, Liu saw a 2 to 3 year old boy who was extremely thin and weak, limping as he walked. Is that Heavenly Emperor Huang's substitute in the second ancestral ground? What a pitiful little guy. Seeing the bullied child, Liu shook his head and sighed. Heavenly Emperor Huang suffered a calamity when he was young and narrowly escaped death. In order to fight for a chance of survival for him, you acted as a substitute and attracted all kinds of attacks. You're also very pitiful. Heavenly Emperor Huang was born in the Stone Kingdom's Martial King Manor and was a direct descendant of the Stone Kingdom's royal family. He had the qualifications to compete for the throne of Stone Kingdom's human emperor. Heavenly Emperor Huang was a natural-born supreme being. There was a supreme being bone in his chest. His innate divine abilities contained immeasurable divine might. However, it was precisely because of this supreme bone that Heavenly Emperor Huang suffered a tragic fate. Heavenly Emperor Huang's grandfather, Shi Zhongtian, killed a young Pishio in the 100 Races battlefield in order to find pure-blooded, true spirit blood to refine Heavenly Emperor Huang's body. This angered the adult Pishio. Under the pursuit of the adult Pishio, Shi Zhongtian lost an arm and fled the 100 Races battlefield, disappearing without a trace. Heavenly Emperor Huang's parents, Shi Xiling and his wife, left the infant Heavenly Emperor Huang in the care of his cousin Shi Ziding and his wife in order to find Shi Zhongtian's whereabouts. The two of them set off for the great wilderness to find Shi Zhongtian's whereabouts. Then, this was the beginning of the tragedy. Shi Ziding's son, Shi Yi, was born with double pupils and had the bearing of an ancient sage. With the power of his double pupils, he saw the supreme bone in Heavenly Emperor Huang's chest. Shi Yi's mother dug out Heavenly Emperor Huang's supreme bone and implanted it into Shi Yi's body. She extracted Heavenly Emperor Huang's origin true blood to nourish the transplanted supreme bone. Heavenly Emperor Huang was on his last breath and narrowly escaped death. Then, Shi Xiling and his wife returned to the martial imperial manor. When they saw Heavenly Emperor Huang's miserable state, they drew their sword in anger and caused a ruckus in the martial imperial manor, killing Shi Yi's mother. A supreme being who lost his supreme bone was no longer a supreme being. Heavenly Emperor Huang was abandoned by the martial imperial manor's clansmen. Everyone supported the man with double pupils to suppress Shi Xiling and banish Shi Xiling's family to the second ancestral land. Shi Yi's mother was from the Rain clan, which was also a noble clan in Stone Country. When Heavenly Emperor Huang's family was in trouble, the Rain clan naturally had to exterminate them. Therefore, this 2- or 3-year-old child became Heavenly Emperor Huang's substitute to attract the enemy's attention. Meanwhile, Heavenly Emperor Huang was placed in the first ancestral land by Shi Xiling and his wife, which was Stone Village. In order to restore Heavenly Emperor Huang's vitality, Shi Xiling and his wife went deep into the immemorial Divine Mountain to search for sacred medicine and never returned. Heavenly Emperor Huang narrowly escaped death. His vitality was stimulated and he slowly recovered. He was the little guy from Stone Village who was still wet behind the ears. Therefore, Heavenly Emperor Huang, you miserable substitute, from now on, I will be your comrade who will fight alongside you and conquer the endless void. Liu had already made up his mind that this tragic child would be the new system host. Chapter 549. Cough. Cough. The little boy limped to the front of the old courtyard. While coughing, he moved his feet with great difficulty. In front of the courtyard, there were several limestone steps. To an ordinary person, these few steps were something that could be easily crossed with a single step. However, for this lame boy, it was a difficult and painful torture. Huff, huff. The little boy climbed up the steps with great difficulty. While supporting his injured lame leg, his little face was filled with pain. Sweat dripped down from his forehead. At the entrance of the courtyard, there were 2 tall and sturdy middle-aged men. These 2 men were the servants of the second ancestral land of the Stone Clan. Seeing the little boy moving his feet with great difficulty and pain, these 2 servants did not have any intention to help. Instead, they crossed their arms and sneered mockingly. Young master, you're really lucky. Even after being bitten by the poison dragon, you still won't die. One of the servants sneered. In order to expel the poison from your body, the old man probably won't live for more than 2 days. Wait until the old man dies. Gee, what young master? I heard the master of the Rain clan say that this brat might not be the young master. The other servant curled his lips in disdain. It's very likely that he's the descendant of that old man in the manor. The old man is about to die. Young master, why are you still holding on like this? Aren't you tired? Wait until the old man dies. Then you might as well follow him. The second ancestral land, the land of exile. Ever since this young master arrived, the Rain clan had continuously bribed the servants of the manor. The 2 servants at the entrance of the courtyard had already been bribed by the Rain clan. The old man that the servant spoke of was the person in charge of the second ancestral land of the Stone clan. At this moment, this person was about to die, and the servants were becoming more and more unrestrained. You? Nonsense. Grandfather won't die. Cough, cough. The little boy painfully raised his head and loudly retorted. Just as he said this, he started to cough violently again. Gee, the servant sneered. He was too lazy to pay attention to this so-called young master. After the little boy walked up the steps with great difficulty and entered the courtyard, the 2 servants began to discuss again. Say, if he really isn't the young master, why would the master of the Rain clan spend so much effort to kill him? Whether he is the real young master or not, no one can be sure. To the lord of the Rain clan, regardless of whether it was true or not, he would kill him first. Even if I kill the wrong person, so what? That's true. While the servants were discussing, the little boy had already returned to the courtyard. Child, an old man with a face full of death was lying on the bed. He was on the verge of death. The old man's eyes were filled with tears as he looked at the 2 to 3-year-old boy who was limping in. Child, don't blame your great-grandfather. Grandpa 15's descendant was a natural-born supreme being. He shouldn't have died like this. Great-grandfather knows this is unfair to you. The old man trembled as he held the little boy's hand, tears rolling down his cheeks. Child, I'm going to die. After I die, also, the old man paused for a moment and remained silent, as if he couldn't bear to tell the cruel truth to this young child. Grandfather, don't die. Tears rolled down from the little boy's eyes. He held the old man's hand tightly, as if he was trying his best to save the old man's life. Poor child. The old man reached out his other hand, wanting to caress the little boy's face. His hand reached out halfway, but it suddenly fell down, unable to move. The old man, who was on his last breath, had already breathed his last. Great-grandfather. Even though the little boy was young, he knew that his grandfather had already left forever. The old man is dead? Hearing the little boy's cries, the 2 servants looked at each other, and a smile appeared on their faces. Since the old man is already dead, then one of the servants reached out his hand and made a chopping motion. Don't! The other servant hurriedly stopped him. Even if the lord of the Rain clan gave us orders, we still can't do it openly. The wasteland is very dangerous. It's normal for a child to have some accidents happen. Makes sense. Makes sense. The other servant raised his thumb and nodded in agreement. Poor little guy. Li Yu's figure flashed and appeared in the courtyard, appearing in front of the little boy. Who are you? A figure suddenly appeared in front of him. The little boy, who was immersed in pain, raised his head vigilantly, looking at Li Yu with a face full of vigilance. In the wasteland, facing countless dangers, it was difficult for the human race to survive. Children matured relatively early. Children of 11 or 12 years old could get married and have children. Even though this little boy was only 2 or 3 years old, his wisdom was equivalent to a 5 or 6-year-old child. I'm Grand Supreme. Li Yu nodded at the little boy, then looked at the old man who had passed away on the bed and sighed. He's so young, yet he's already suffered so much. Truly pitiful. Li Yu's sigh was indeed sincere. A 2 or 3-year-old child was simply a treasure in the palm of his hand in the world he came from. How could he be allowed to suffer any grievances? Now, this little guy had suffered all kinds of torture, and even his legs were crippled. He was truly too pitiful. Pitiful little guy. Li Yu looked at the little guy with pity. He waved his hand, and a bit of spiritual light rushed out from his fingertip entering the little guy's body. This was a drop of creation divine spring from the undying mountain. The water of the divine spring could revive the dead and regrow flesh and bones. This bit of spiritual light entered the little boy's body, and endless vitality bloomed, washing and nourishing the little boy's entire body. The little boy's entire body trembled, and his entire body bloomed with a brilliant light. It was as if a handful of dry would have been added to a bonfire that was about to go out, and it burned fiercely. If Liu had not isolated this room, this light would have definitely alarmed many people. A moment later, the light disappeared. I'm already fine. The little boy was shocked to find that all the injuries on his body had recovered. Even his crippled leg had returned to normal. Are you the cultivator that great-grandfather mentioned? The little boy looked at Liu in shock and hurriedly thanked Liu. Thank you for saving me, master. I'm a cultivator. Liu nodded. Child, are you willing to cultivate with me? Liu really couldn't bear to play any tricks on a 2- or 3-year-old child, nor could he bear to play any fortuitous encounters. Can I? The little boy was pleasantly surprised. He hurriedly knelt in front of Liu. Master, please accept me as your disciple. Get up. Liu reached out to help the little boy up. Since you have already become a disciple of the Supreme Palace, then you are the current successor of the Supreme Palace. Child, you will definitely become the supreme being of the world. Chapter 550. Child, what is your name? Liu looked at the little boy with a smile and asked softly, My name is Sure Hao, but I know that I am not the real Sure Hao. The little boy looked up at Liu. I don't have a name that belongs to me. Grandfather said that we have to repay a debt of gratitude and save a little brother. Then, do you hate that little brother? That is the real Sure Hao. After Liu said this, even he felt that it was a little inappropriate. Sure enough, the little boy's answer made Liu feel embarrassed. Why would I hate him? The little boy's face was pure, without the slightest bit of change. Instead, he was very puzzled by Liu's question. All right, this is just a 2- or 3-year-old child. Liu suddenly felt a headache. The system's host was a 2- or 3-year-old child. How is he going to play this game? I have to let his mind mature. A 2- or 3-year-old child, no matter how mature his mind is, can't play any tricks. Thinking of this, Liu had an idea. Child, you're tired. Close your eyes and sleep. With a slight sweep of his soul power, the little boy instantly fell into a deep sleep. Reaching out to help the little boy up, Liu placed him on the bed. Looking at the dead old man on the bed, Liu sighed. Old man, I will take care of your little grandson. You can rest in peace. With a wave of his hand, black and yellow energy swept out, and the ground of the room split open into a bottomless pit. After placing the dead old man into the 100-zhong deep pit, with a wave of his hand, the ground closed, burying the old man underground. Now, I have to deal with the little boy's mental problem. After burying the old man, Liu turned to look at the little boy. With a wave of his hand formed a few mysterious and unfathomable hand seals. 6 hand seals were formed, and 6 black holes appeared. Using the 6 Tao reincarnation heavenly technique to construct reincarnation, in addition to Lu Mo's Dream Tao reincarnation technique, let this little boy grow in enlightenment in reincarnation. Reaching out with his hand, Liu pulled out the little boy's sleeping soul. We still need to add some protection. We can't let his soul dissipate in the cycle of reincarnation. A dot of light appeared at the tip of his finger, enveloped the little boy's soul, and threw it into the black hole manifested by the 6 paths reincarnation. An instant was an eternity, and a snap of a finger was 10,000 years. In Liu's fictional 6 paths of reincarnation, the little boy's soul was constantly reincarnated. However, every reincarnation did not erase his original memories. 100 generations of accumulation, 10,000 years of precipitation. In order to save effort, Liu did not include the cultivation world in the fictional reincarnation cycle, only the ordinary mortal world. However, Even after being reincarnated 100 times in the mortal world and settling down for 10,000 years, the little boy's accumulation was already very deep. Birth, old age, sickness, and death. 10,000 years of experience, 100 reincarnations, the growth of the mind and the understanding of reincarnation were already very deep. Reincarnate 100 times, the soul returns to the body. Reaching out, the little boy's soul flew out of the 6 paths of reincarnation and returned to the young body. Phew! The little boy released a long breath, slowly opening his eyes. A type of endless vicissitudes that did not match his age appeared in the little boy's pure eyes. Who are you? Liu looked at the little boy, his eyes calm like water, indifferently asking. This question was extremely important. This was related to whether the little boy comprehended his true self, whether he found himself, whether he was lost in the 100 reincarnations. Who am I? The little boy stood up, raising his eyes and looking around the room, a bit of reminiscence appearing in his eyes. Grandfather has already been buried by Master. I remember that before I fell asleep, Grandfather had just passed away. The little boy released a sigh, raising his head to look at Liu. What a great dream. I have had many names, but the one I remember the most clearly is only one name. However, that name Hao, I do not wish to use it anymore. Then what is your name now? Liu saw that the little boy did not lose himself in the reincarnation cycle, nodding in satisfaction. My name is Hao. The little boy stood up, raising his head and saying a name. Hao. This name made Liu somewhat shocked. The name Hao also had a great background. All right, Hao. This name is not bad. Liu nodded, acknowledging the name Hao. Thus, this fellow who should have been called Shi Qingfeng was messed up by Liu, becoming Hao. Master, what I experienced, was it all a dream? Hao's eyes were filled with the vicissitudes of life. Correct me. Liu waved his hand at the little boy. First of all, you cannot call me Master. You can only call me Ancestral Master, because my seniority is too high. Liu impersonated the identity of Supreme Hall's Ancestral Master, so he could not directly take Hao as a disciple. Hao greets Ancestral Master. Hao stood up and bowed in front of Liu. After 100 reincarnations, Hao already understood that this Ancestral Master was not as simple as an ordinary cultivator. Get up. Liu helped Hao up and continued. You asked me just now whether what you experienced was a dream. In fact, what is real? What is fake? What is reality? What is a dream? Everything depends on you. Ancestral Master means that everything in the world is real and illusory. Everything depends on what I know. If I think it's real, it's real. Hao nodded. These are all my experiences. If I think it's real, it's real. It's just that. At this point, Hao raised his head and looked at Liu. Ancestral Master made me reincarnate 100 times. I'm afraid there's a reason. Of course. Liu smiled and nodded. Our sect is called Supreme Hall. Every generation successor is the Supreme Hall of the present age. You are the current successor of our sect. Naturally, you have to forge the qualifications of a Supreme Hall. Liu pointed at Hao's forehead. This is our sect's inheritance, the heavenly 6 paths of reincarnation technique. If you want to cultivate the heavenly 6 paths of reincarnation technique, you naturally have to comprehend reincarnation. Otherwise, how can you control the power of reincarnation? The heavenly 6 paths of reincarnation technique. All things in the world, all living beings, are in the cycle of reincarnation. So that's how it is. After receiving the heavenly 6 paths of reincarnation technique from Liu, Hao came to a realization. He stood up and bowed to Liu. Thank you for your guidance, Ancestral Master. The flowers in front of the courtyard bloomed and withered. The clouds in the horizon moved, and the myriad states of the world rose and fell in the cycle of reincarnation. After 100 reincarnations, Hao already had a deep understanding of this. Of course, if not for Liu's protection, Hao's little bit of soul power would have dissipated in the cycle of reincarnation long ago. This is our Supreme Hall's inheritance token. It has endless mysterious abilities. It will guide you on the path to becoming a supreme hall. Drip a drop of blood on it. A palm-sized bronze tablet appeared in Liu's hand. The words Supreme Hall were engraved on the surface of the tablet. It looked ordinary, but it was actually a new system. Thank you, Ancestral Master, for bestowing this treasure. Xiaohao took the bronze plate and bit his finger, dripping a drop of blood on it. Buzz! The bronze plate exploded with endless radiance and instantly merged into Xiaohao's body. Boom! Xiaohao's mind shook fiercely. A giant turtle carrying a huge palace appeared in his mind. Xiaohao was shocked to see the scene in his mind. That is the imprint of the Supreme Hall. When your cultivation is successful, you can go to the real Supreme Hall to pay your respects to the Ancestral Master and formally enter the sect. Liu smiled and waved his hand, shooting out a light into Xiaohao's mind. This is the Taotai Paragon art, the innate paragon art of pure-blooded true spirits. In our lineage, everything depends on one's own effort. Heavenly arts and paragon arts can be considered the starting point for you. From now on, everything will depend on you. Xiaohao understands. Xiaohao bowed to Liu. Xiaohao will not disappoint Ancestral Master's expectations. I will definitely become the Supreme Hall of this era. Chapter 551. Supremes aren't that simple. Liu glanced at Xiaohao, giving him more pressure. Our lineage is about being invincible within the same realm. The successor of the Supreme Palace is invincible from the start. Heroes bow their heads, and only I am supreme. Yes. Xiaohao puffed out his chest in high spirits. Don't worry, Ancestral Master. Xiaohao's name will shock the world. Very good. Liu nodded in satisfaction. I look forward to seeing you reach the peak and spread the name of the Supreme Palace. I've already given you what you deserve. You'll have to rely on yourself in the future. Liu waved his hand at Xiaohao. I'm leaving. With a sway of his body, Liu's figure instantly disappeared. This experience is like a dream. Just a moment ago, he was a weak little boy who had been bullied. In just a moment, he had experienced 100 reincarnations, become the successor of the Supreme Palace, and obtained the 6 paths of reincarnation technique and the Taotai treasured art. It was simply unimaginable, like a dream. The servants of the manor were so disrespectful to me, so bullying. I was bitten by the venomous flood dragon and almost died. I'm afraid all of this has to do with that name. Xiaohao sighed. I don't know if that little big brother I've never met is still alive. We're all unfortunate people. Xiaohao turned his head to look at the door, and a cold light appeared in his eyes. As a servant of the Stone Tribe, you actually colluded with other tribes to harm me. You really don't know what's good for you. Clenching his fists, Xiaohao snorted coldly. In the past, I couldn't resist, but now... Withdrawing his gaze, Xiaohao put his thoughts on the 6 paths of reincarnation technique and the Taotai treasured art that Liu had taught him. The 6 paths of reincarnation technique. Apart from controlling the power of reincarnation and possessing boundless divine might, it's also a peerless technique that can control treasured arts. Seeing the introduction of the technique, Xiaohao already understood how profound the inheritance he had received was. The treasured arts of pure-blooded true spirits were the innate abilities of pure-blooded true spirits. They were extremely powerful. However, there was a problem here. After all, the innate talent of a pure-blooded true spirit came from the pure-blooded true spirit itself. Humans who cultivated these paragon techniques could also unleash tyrannical power. However, the human body was different from the body of a pure-blooded true spirit after all. Innate precious techniques were not the human race's own divine abilities, so they could not display these precious techniques to the extreme. After cultivating the heavenly art of the 6 paths of reincarnation, he was able to unleash the full potential of these pure-blooded creatures and even the 10 ferocious primordial beasts. Moreover, he could merge many different types of precious techniques into one and unleash a divine ability that was formed from the fusion of several precious techniques. The power was incomparably tyrannical, and it was unrivaled in the world. As expected of the Supreme Hall, as expected of the invincible. He was able to display his precious technique to the extreme, and he was also able to fuse many precious techniques that had been displayed to the extreme and explode with a single strike. This kind of power was simply unstoppable. Xiao Hao was overjoyed that he had obtained the inheritance of the Supreme Palace. The Taotai treasure technique is actually swallow the heavens and devour the earth, devouring all things in order to strengthen oneself. He's simply too strong. Xiao Hao also understood why the ancestral master had passed down the Taodai Paragon technique to him. With this Paragon technique, he could devour all things in order to strengthen himself. His cultivation and strength would definitely grow rapidly. Xiao Hao will not disappoint the ancestral master's expectations after his painstaking efforts. Sitting cross-legged on the bed, Xiao Hao circulated the Taodai Paragon technique. Runes began to revolve around his body, and a powerful suction force was generated. Absorb. Opening his mouth, it was as if a whirlpool had been created. The spiritual qi in the world swarmed over and poured into Xiao Hao's body. So strong. With this enormous amount of spiritual qi pouring into his body, Xiao Hao felt as if his body was about to explode. 6 paths of reincarnation refine. Stopping the Taodai Paragon technique, Xiao Hao formed 6 hand seals in succession. It was as if 6 enormous black holes had opened up in his body, constantly refining the abundant spiritual qi in his body. In just a moment, all the spiritual qi in his body had been refined. Every bit of his flesh and blood was nourished by the spiritual qi. It was as if a dried-up land had received rain. It was filled with vitality. It really is a peerless technique. Feeling the changes in his body, Xiao Hao was overjoyed. He continued to cultivate. The Taotai Paragon technique devoured spiritual qi, while the 6 paths of reincarnation refined spiritual qi. He cultivated in this manner in succession. Unknowingly, a night had passed. Come out. Hurry up and come out. Not long after Xiao Hao finished cultivating, a loud roar came from outside the door. Then, the door was kicked open with a bang. The old fellow is already dead. Hurry up and bury him. Don't leave him here. Where's the old fellow's corpse? The middle-aged servant rushed in and shouted at Xiao Hao. Then, he suddenly discovered that the old fellow's corpse was not in the room. What's going on? Wasn't the old fellow dead? How? The servant was shocked. He suddenly thought of a possibility. Could it be that the old fellow isn't dead? Did he purposely leave me in to deal with me? The servant turned pale with fright. Even if the old fellow was about to die, he was still a member of the Stone Kingdom's imperial family. He also possessed an extraordinary cultivation. The servant was not worried about the old fellow who was paralyzed on the bed. However, if he was sent to the old fellow's side, then he would be in big trouble. Even if the servant had practiced a bit of an incomplete Paragon technique, he still had the cultivation of the blood transformation realm. Compared to the old fellow, he was far from enough. Run. The servant made a prompt decision and turned to run. However, the old man he was expecting didn't appear. Instead, a little guy he didn't expect made a move. Xiao! The sound of something breaking through the air rang out. A young figure shot out like an arrow and blocked the servant's path. You. The servant saw Xiao Hao blocking in front of him and was somewhat surprised. Then, he sneered. The old fellow must be unable to move. He let this little brat block me to stall for time. What's the use of this crippled little brat? The servant sneered disdainfully. He waved his hand and wanted to send Xiao Hao flying. In the servant's eyes, Xiao Hao, who was lame and half dead, could be easily dealt with. He was simply unable to stop his footsteps. What's going on? The servant slapped out, but he found that Xiao Hao's figure flashed and dodged the slap. Then he instantly rushed in front of him and waved his hand. He's not lame? The servant found that Xiao Hao did not show any signs of being lame. His body was very agile and fast. He suddenly remembered that Xiao Hao had rushed out of the room and blocked the door. His figure was as fast as lightning. Damn it! The servant's face changed and sweat appeared on his forehead. In his eyes, with Xiao Hao blocking, the old fellow who was hiding would definitely sneak attack from behind. The servant casually slapped at Xiao Hao and turned his attention to the incoming violent attack behind him. Then the attack he was waiting for did not come from behind. Instead, it came from the little boy in front of him that he had been ignoring. Devour the heavens and earth. Xiao Hao's hands fiercely pushed out. Runes flashed, and a pitch-black and deep black hole appeared between Xiao Hao's hands and enveloped the servant's body. Ah! The servant let out a horrified scream. He only felt that the blood in his body was rapidly being devoured by this huge black hole. In a moment, the servant's body turned into a pile of ashes that scattered everywhere. The blood in his body, his life force, everything was completely devoured by the Taotai treasured technique. Even his clothes were turned into ashes. The Taotai treasure technique is too strong. After devouring the servant's blood, Xiao Hao's body turned red, and he felt like he was about to explode. 6 paths of reincarnation, refine. Xiao Hao quickly used the 6 paths of reincarnation to refine the blood in his body. In a moment, the servant's blood of the blood movement realm was completely refined and merged into Xiao Hao's body. Rumble. The blood was like a tide that swept through his body. As the runes flowed, Xiao Hao's body emitted a bright light. He had officially stepped into the blood movement realm. Chapter 552. Xiao Hao's path of cultivation has already begun. Within the Supreme Palace, Liu heard the system's notification and nodded. Then, he looked towards the desolate mountains. Those 4 fellows are still searching in the desolate mountains. 4 pure-blooded true spirits at the Exalt realm have frightened all sorts of ferocious beasts in the desolate mountains. Chaos has already begun. According to the original development, when the white bone case appeared, the 4 fellows would fight until the mountains collapsed and the earth split. Especially the heaven-swallowing sparrow and Xiongqi's rampage, destroying hundreds of thousands of miles of desolate land. The willow deity who had not recovered its strength could only bring Stone Village out of the desolate mountains. Now, it's naturally different. Liu smiled and turned his head to look in the direction of Stone Village. The devilish brat is causing trouble again? The young Huang Tian Emperor had his supreme being bone dug out. Although he was already 3 years old, he only looked like he was 2 years old. However, the devilish brat was really causing trouble. Dig out that bird's nest. I'm going to dig out that bird's nest. The little guy was chasing a 5-colored sparrow in the village while gasping for breath. After chasing for a long time, he still could not catch up. He angrily stomped his feet and pointed at the 5-colored sparrow's nest on a big tree in the village while angrily roaring with his childish voice. Ha ha! Little guy, you didn't catch up again. When the villagers saw this scene, they all pointed at the little guy and laughed loudly. They did not see the problem and felt that it was normal for a 2 to 3-year-old to not be able to catch the 5-colored sparrow. However, although the little guy was young, his blood was extremely vigorous and his strength was not inferior to a 10-year-old child's. He chased for a long time and still could not catch up to the 5-colored sparrow. This 5-colored sparrow was naturally not an ordinary sparrow. We won't dig out the house sparrow's nest. Come, we'll take you to dig out a big bird's nest. The one who spoke was a tall and strong youth. The youth's name was Shi Dazhuang, and he was 12 years old this year. He was the oldest child in Stone Village and also the strongest. Naturally, he became the head child of Stone Village. The bird's nest outside? Is it even bigger than this? The little guy blinked his eyes and immediately became interested. Right, a very big bird's nest. At this time, a very clever 7 or 8-year-old boy who looked like a monkey chuckled. He seemed to be very interested in the bird's nest. But Grandpa Patriarch said that it's very dangerous outside and doesn't allow us to go out. Although the little guy was a bit moved when he thought of his grandfather chief's words, he felt that running out like this was a bit disobedient. What are you afraid of? Shi Dazhuang patted his chest loudly. After practicing the new cultivation technique, my strength is now at 2,000 gene. It's not like we're going to fight a dire beast. There's no need to be afraid. Then all right. For children, the more adults forbade them from doing something, the more curious they were. When a few brats gathered together, they could even flip the sky upside down. While the adults were out hunting and no one was paying attention to them, the group of brats slipped out of the village and went deep into the wilderness. Oh, roar! Deep within the desolate wasteland, a thunderous roar came from the depths of the mountain range. The huge tremor caused the surroundings to rumble. Rocks tumbled down and the trees swayed. The beast's roar was like thunder, and its ferocious aura made one's scalp go numb. Monkey, how much further? Hearing this beast's roar, the group of children's faces paled. Even Sir Dazhuang's heart was beating like a drum. At this moment, they were already very far away from Stone Village. The mountains in the desolate wasteland were incomparably dangerous. Even adults had to be careful, let alone these children. Not far. The monkey's name was Shi Zhongho. Although he wasn't very tall, he had a lot of strength and was also very clever. Uncle Hu and the others said that the cliff is right here. The stone monkey scuttled up a large tree and looked around. Afterwards, he happily said to everyone, "It's right in front." After passing through a primitive forest, a precipitous cliff towered in front of them. In the middle of this cliff, a huge bird's nest was located on top of a huge tree that grew out of the cliff. Looking from afar, within that huge bird's nest, one could see 3 huge eggs emitting a bit of fluorescent light. That's the green-scaled eagle's nest. The stone monkey pointed at the nest on top of the cliff and winked at everyone. At this time, the green-scaled eagle has already gone out to hunt. If we want to dig out the nest, we have to hurry. Shi Dazhuang brought a group of children and rushed all the way. Very quickly, they arrived at the bottom of the cliff. So many beast bones. At the bottom of the cliff, there was a pile of huge white bones. Among them, there were even some huge beast bones with traces of blood. These huge bones, every one of them was taller than an adult. It could be seen that the owner of these bones was definitely a huge beast. What was even more shocking was that on those huge beast bones, there were terrifying claw marks that deeply penetrated into the bones, making people's hair stand on end. These are the bones of a dragon-horned elephant. The stone monkey looked at these huge bones and sucked in a breath of cold air. Too scary. The green-scaled eagle actually ate the dragon-horned elephant. Another child cried out in shock. Hurry up and dig out the nest. If the green-scaled eagle comes back, we're dead for sure. Shi Dazhuang waved his hand and called for everyone to move quickly. Monkey, you take a few of the younger ones and carefully watch the surroundings to prevent that green-scaled eagle from coming back. I want to go up. The little guy came out. He didn't want to be a lookout. You're so small. Shi Dazhuang felt that the little guy was too small and going up wasn't too appropriate. My strength isn't any less than yours. The little guy raised his arm, and his figure jumped up the cliff with a sing-sing-song sound. In a moment, he climbed up very high. Let's go. The little guy already went up, and Shi Dazhuang had no other choice. He hurriedly took a few children and climbed up the cliff. Huge mountain vines hung down from the cliff, becoming a natural rope for these children. These children of Stone Village all cultivated Li Yu's worldly immortal martial path. Their strength greatly increased, and they climbed along the mountain vines at lightning speed. We're here. From the mountain vines to the bird nest. This huge bird nest had a radius of 10 zhong and was even bigger than the houses of Stone Village. Inside the bird nest, there were piles of countless huge corpses with flesh and blood. In the middle of the bird nest, there were 3 huge bird eggs arranged in a triangular shape. Speckles of fluorescent light circulated on the eggshell, mysterious and unfathomable. Tonight there's egg soup to eat. The little guy licked his lips, and his mouth was already drooling. Don't you like to drink milk? You even like to eat eggs? A child laughed and teased the little guy. I stopped drinking milk a long time ago. I only drink it like water. The little guy retorted. Stop messing around, take the eggs, and quickly leave. Shi Dazhuang took out a few bee skin bags and put the 3 bird eggs into them. The few of them each carried a bag and hurriedly ran down the cliff. Did you get anything? A few children who were on guard saw the few of them come down and quickly surrounded them. Got it. Haha. This is the biggest bird nest I've ever looted. Go. Take advantage of the fact that the green-scaled eagle hasn't come back yet. Let's quickly return. The group of children carried the bags and ran towards the direction of the village. Screech! A huge eagle cry soared into the sky, and the sharp sound pierced their eardrums until they felt pain. The green-scaled eagle is back. Quickly run. The group of devilish children cried out strangely and miserably ran towards the direction of Stone Village. Screech! An eagle that was 10 zhang long, and its entire body was covered in green scales. Its 2 wings were like heaven-splitting blades, and it whistled as it rushed towards the group of devilish children. Honglong! The pair of blade-like wings smashed apart the huge trees in the forest, and like a meteor, it smashed into the ground. Wood shavings swirled in the air, and gravel flew in all directions. The devilish children cried out loudly, and their faces paled as they miserably ran away. With a single dive, it destroyed more than half of the forest. For this group of children, the green-scaled eagle was too terrifying. Hee, Heavenly Emperor Huang, you look just like a troublemaking, devilish child. When Liu saw this scene, he laughed loudly. There was actually someone who asked why he didn't save that old man. Why did he have to save normal people from old age and sickness? In the myriad of worlds, in the endless time and space, there were countless people dying of sickness and old age at every moment. Wouldn't the main character have to save people every day? Saving all living things was the Buddha's job, and Liu couldn't do it. Chapter 553. Quickly run. Run back to Stone Village and we'll be saved. Sure, Dezhuang roared, bringing the group of brats as they madly ran through the mountain forest. Honglong! Behind them, a huge tree collapsed, and crushed stones flew everywhere. The green-scaled eagle screeched, swooping down again and again. Its blade-like wings chopped apart countless trees in the forest. It's over. We can't escape. There was still some distance from here to Stone Village, but there was no forest on this path, only an open space. If they entered this open space, the green-scaled eagle would swoop down and tear this group of brats to shreds. Let's go hide in the cave. The little guy shouted towards the crowd and brought the group of devilish brats into a cave on the side of the cliff. We're saved. After everyone rushed into the cave, they breathed heavily, and their faces were filled with joy as they laughed. The brats who caused trouble, after escaping, would naturally be proud of themselves, as if they had won a great battle. Little guy, how did you know there was a cave here? Sure, Dezhuang patted the little guy's shoulder. If it wasn't for you today, we would be finished. Last time I chased a little red sparrow, and chased it here. It was Uncle who brought me back. The little guy embarrassedly rubbed his head. Luckily you, Sure Dezhuang was about to say something, when he suddenly heard a loud noise from the cave entrance. Turning around to look at the entrance of the cave, a huge head, flickering with a metallic light, stretched out from the cave entrance. A pair of cold eyes stared unwaveringly at the brats in the cave. It's coming in. The brats screamed and hurriedly retreated. Along, the green-scaled eagle's metallic beak fiercely pecked at the cave entrance. With a loud bang, crushed stones flew everywhere, and a part of the cave entrance collapsed. If this continued, the green-scaled eagle would quickly open up a large cave entrance, and none of the children in the cave would be able to escape. This green-scaled eagle is the descendant of the archaic devil bird green sky pum, so it's still worth training. Liyu's figure noiselessly appeared at the entrance of the cave. Looking at the huge green-scaled eagle in front of him, he smiled and nodded his head. The green-scaled eagle and the hatchlings from the 3 eggs will all be members of Stone Village from now on. He could also help Celestial Emperor Huang. I will give you a stroke of good fortune. With a press of his hand, Liu caught the green-scaled eagle, and with a wave of his hand, stored it in the resource storage. With a flash, Liu left the cave and appeared on a distant mountain peak. System, scan the green-scaled eagle's azure sky, Peng bloodline information. With a sweep of the five-colored light wave, the information of the azure sky, Peng bloodline in the green-scaled eagle's body was completely scanned. The so-called azure sky rock is actually an azure rock. The green Peng and the golden Peng are both descendants of the Kuan Peng. The bloodline of the 10 ferocious primordial beasts is extraordinary. Just like the true dragon, the Kuan Peng was one of the 10 primordial ferocious beasts. The power of the green rock was roughly at the level of the 9 sons of the dragon. Purify the green rock bloodline and reconstruct the green-scaled eagle's body. Since he wanted to nurture this green-scaled eagle into one of Celestial Emperor Huang's helpers, then he had to give it a stroke of good fortune. The five-colored brilliance swept out, and the green-scaled eagle's body instantly collapsed, leaving behind only a drop of blood that was surrounded by a green light. Celestial Emperor Huang, in order to give you a complete set of subordinates, I have spent a lot of effort. Liu waved his hand, and a ball of divine spring water was extracted from the undying mountain's fortune divine spring, and he poured it into the drop of green blood. Boom! The sky was filled with green light, and within the green light, a cold silver moon seemed to rise from the sea of green light. Within the silver moon, there was a giant tree that reached into the clouds. On top of the giant tree, a green Peng stood at the top of the tree. The green Peng's entire body was green, and each of its feathers seemed to be carved from jade. It emitted an endless gale, tearing the sky and shattering all things in the world. Screech, a long screech resounded, and the green light receded, and the strange phenomenon dissipated. Only a Peng that was about 10 zhang long and covered in green feathers, as if it was carved from jade, was left in the resource warehouse. Not bad, it looks more like it. Liu waved his hand and released the green Peng. Gulp, gulp. After the green Peng was released, it prostrated in front of Liu, and its throat made a sound. The bird's head continuously kowtowed to the ground, as if it was kowtowing to Liu. No need to thank me, get up. Liu waved his hand. Although you have purified your bloodline and turned into a pure-blooded true spirit, your cultivation is still too weak. You can't even refine the hyoid bone in your throat, and you can't even speak. You still need to work hard to cultivate. Gulp. The green Peng turned its head to look in the direction of the devilish brats. It made a sound in its throat, and then kowtowed to Liu. Don't worry about your children. Liu had already sensed the green Peng's soul fluctuation and understood its meaning. They also have their own fortune. Gulp. Gulp. The green Peng lowered its head, and like a little chick pecking at rice, it kept kowtowing. All right. I will also restore their pure-blooded green Peng bodies. Liu looked at the green Peng and pointed at the distant stone village. However, you must protect that village from now on, including your children. You will all become members of the village. Gulp. The green Peng agreed without hesitation. Since that's the case, I will pass on the green Peng treasure technique to you. He waved his hand, and a ball of light fell into the green Peng's mind. The green Peng was only a pure-blooded green Peng created by Liu. It was not a true adult green Peng, and it did not have the innate treasure technique inheritance of the green Peng clan. The Supreme Palace had collected countless books, and there was also the green Peng treasure technique. There are 3 drops of green Peng true blood here. Liu threw out a jade bottle, and the green Peng caught it in its beak. Go to Stone Village and pay your respects to Willow Deity, the guardian spirit of Stone Village. Say that you came on Ai's orders. The Willow Deity will take care of the following matters for you. Gulp. You're asking who I am? Hee, I Supreme. Go. Liu smiled and waved his hand. Gulp. The green Peng spread its wings, and an endless storm circulated between its wings. With a rumbling sound, the green Peng broke through the sky like lightning and flew towards Stone Village. Gulp. The green Peng let out a long cry and descended towards the village where a willow tree grew. Ah, what is that? A vicious bird is coming to attack. Seeing the arrival of the green pung, the faces of everyone in Stone Village changed. They all picked up their weapons and prepared for battle. When the dark green willow branch flashed with endless green light and swept towards the green pung in the sky. The dark green willow branch was like a soaring green dragon, and the leaves were like sharp swords that tore through the sky. The willow branch swept out, and the world-shaking momentum scared the green pung out of its wits. Gulp! Gulp! Seeing this momentum, the green pung immediately cried out and expressed its intention to the willow deity. "You're here on the orders of the Grand Empyrean? Come down." Hearing the green pung's cry, the willow deity understood its intention. The willow branch that swept towards the green pung stopped, and the overflowing momentum was retracted. The willow branch that was like a soaring green dragon withdrew. Gulp! The green pung, who had been scared out of its wits by the willow deity, obediently landed under the willow tree and explained the whole sequence of events with a gulu sound. "The children of Stone Village dug out your nest? Even your eggs were dug out?" The willow deity smiled and shook its head. "That group of brats. The Grand Empyrean gave you a fortune and ordered your family to join Stone Village, so you just have to stay here. When those brats return, I will naturally take your children over." A willow branch swept out, and the jade bottle in the green pung's beak was taken over by the willow deity. With its divine sense, the willow deity immediately understood the use of the jade bottle. "You were originally a green-scaled eagle? The Grand Empyrean returned you to your origin and turned you into a green pung? The Empyrean's ability to seize the fortune of heaven and earth is truly unfathomable," the willow deity secretly exclaimed. It was able to return the green-scaled eagle, a descendant of the green pung with a weak bloodline, to its origin and turn it into a pure-blooded green pung. Even the willow deity couldn't help but admire this divine ability. Chapter 554. Little guy, there doesn't seem to be any movement outside. Sherdezhuang raised his head and looked at the cave entrance, then turned his head and said to the little guy, "Could it be already left?" The little guy walked towards the cave entrance, wanted to see what was going on outside. "Don't go. What if that green-scaled eagle is guarding the cave entrance?" Sherdezhuang quickly pulled the little guy. "If you want to see, it's me. How can I let you take the risk?" "Brother Dazhuang, I'm small and nimble. Even if there's danger, I can run faster," Xiao Budian explained and pushed away Sherdezhuang. He tiptoed to the entrance of the cave, stretched out his little head, and glanced outside the cave. Seems like it really isn't here." The little guy walked a few steps outside and looked around. There was no longer any trace of the green-scaled eagle. Could it be that the green-scaled eagle went into hiding? The little guy frowned and raised his vigilance. He was prepared to run back into the cave at any time, and then he shouted loudly. After this loud shout, the surroundings were still silent. It seems like the green-scaled eagle really left. The little guy quickly shouted towards everyone in the cave. "The green-scaled eagle already left. Let's run. Run. Quick, run." The group of brats in the cave immediately rushed out, running towards the direction of Stone Village. They madly ran the entire way. The brats rushed through the open area outside the forest, and like a wisp of smoke, they rushed into Stone Village. "Oh!" The brats gasped for breath, and after looking at each other, they all laughed loudly. "Ha ha! We ran back. Yeah, it was too dangerous just now. It was a bit dangerous, but it was so exciting." The devilish brats were laughing and playing around. They didn't notice that there was a green pung that was about 10 zhang long and covered in green feathers. It looked as if it was carved out of jade. Its green eyes were wide open as it stared fiercely at the group of devilish brats. "Ha! Eh!" The stone monkey laughed wildly, but halfway through, it suddenly saw a huge green pung standing behind everyone, and its laughter suddenly stopped. "Behind! Behind!" The stone monkey pointed at everyone's back and cried out in panic. "What happened at the back?" Everyone turned their heads in confusion. When they saw the majestic and huge azure pung standing behind them, they immediately screamed in fright. Could it be that the green-scaled eagle has caught up? Sure, Dezhuang blocked the group of little fellows behind him. Run, Brother Dezhuang, don't be nervous. The little guy smiled and pushed away Sure Dezhuang's hand. This is Stone Village. With Willow Deity here, if it has any ill intentions, it definitely won't be able to enter. Ah, that's true. Sure Dezhuang scratched his head awkwardly and glanced at the green rock. Where did this big bird come from? Oomph. You bunch of naughty brats. You actually went to dig up other people's nests. Now, they've come knocking on our door. The old patriarch leaned on a dragon-like wooden staff and glared fiercely at the group of brats. Still not taking out the eggs? It's the green-scaled eagle? It wasn't like this before. Hearing the old chief's words, the group of devilish brats were dumbstruck. Grand Empyrean bestowed good fortune and ordered them to join Stone Village. In the future, the Green Rocks family will be our Stone Village's people. Hurry up and take out the eggs. The old chief slammed his staff and was extremely angry at this group of daring brats. If not for the Grand Empyrean's protection, this group of brats would definitely have been torn apart by the Green Rock. If they continued to be so daring, sooner or later they would suffer a loss. They're our own people. Sure Dezhuang had a silly smile on his face and hurriedly took out his pouch and took out the 3 green-scaled eagle eggs. The 3 basin-sized, jade-colored bird eggs emitted a bit of fluorescent light and contained a strong life force. Gulu. The green rock saw the 3 bird eggs and gulped loudly. It was extremely happy. Dezhuang, you guys take these and send the bird eggs to Willow Deity. The old chief instructed and brought the naughty brats to Willow Deity's altar. Put the bird eggs on the altar. Oh, okay. The 3 children carefully placed the bird eggs on the enormous stone altar under the willow tree. Grandpa Chief, what does Willow Deity want these eggs for? The little guy looked at the 3 bird eggs on the altar and asked the old chief. The Green Rocks family has joined our village, so Willow Deity obviously wants them to hatch earlier. The old chief smiled and patted the little guy's head as he explained. Wang, a dark green willow branch drooped down and released endless multicolored light. Within a multicolored light, an ancient jade bottle slowly tipped over. 3 drops of dark green-colored blood condensed like jade. They flickered with a brilliant divine splendor and emitted an enormous aura. A huge whistling sound reverberated in the air, as if a violent hurricane was sweeping over. Ding-dong! The dark green-colored blood dripped down and separately fell onto the 3 bird eggs. It instantly seeped into the eggshell and merged into the bird eggs. Honglong! An endless amount of green light erupted, rippling like a vast ocean. The 3 bird eggs produced a silver, moon-like radiance, as if 3 bright moons were rising from the sea of green light. So powerful! When the devilish brats saw this scene, their horizons were broadened. They all widened their eyes and stared forward without blinking. Gulu. The green rock also stretched out its neck and nervously looked at the 3 bird eggs. Shwa. The willow branch swayed, and 3 brilliant streaks of light rushed out from the jade bottle. Within the streaks of light, endless life force was revealed. Just smelling a bit of the aura made the old chief and the devilish brats feel refreshed and invigorated. Wang. The 3 streaks of light, brimming with life force, separately entered the 3 bird eggs. Endless life force sprouted, and the 3 bird eggs erupted with brilliant radiance as they violently trembled. The mysterious phenomenon appeared. Among the 3 bright moons, there were 3 azure great rocks exuding a boundless strong wind. Kacha! The bird eggs cracked open, and 3 little birds that were about a foot long and covered in green fur appeared in front of everyone, as if they were carved from jade. Wah! So cute! Seeing the 3 little birds, the devilish brats clapped their hands and laughed loudly. Gulu! The green rock excitedly cried out and stretched out its head to touch the three little birds. Gulu, 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 gulu. The three little birds made gulu sounds and intimately rubbed against the green rock's head. They are all pure-blooded green rocks, not bad. Take good care of them. In the future, they will be a great help to Stone Village. The willow deity's voice transmitted into everyone's ears, right? The green rock also has a green rock precious technique. This is a pure-blooded, true spirit treasure technique. In the great wastelands, if it isn't a great country's royal family or a peak holy land, there won't be such a precious technique inheritance. You can go and learn from the green rock. Pure-blooded, true spirit treasure technique. There are true spirit treasure techniques. The old chief finally understood the green rock family's background. He had traveled outside before, so he naturally knew what kind of concept pure-blooded true spirits and true spirit treasure techniques were. Only the archaic divine mountains, a place that transcended the mortal world, would have pure-blooded true spirits. Powerful, pure-blooded true spirits were all overlords of an area, equivalent to human emperors. The old chief was so excited that his entire face was red, and his hands and feet were trembling. With the willow deity's protection and 4 pure-blooded true spirits joining Stone Village, as well as a pure-blooded true spirit treasure technique, Stone Village would definitely restore the glory of its ancestors. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.